Episode 3, The Burning Mill. A mill is a mundane but rather perfect metaphor. It's life going in circles, the same cycles of birth and death. And when we're looking at things like this, blood and revenge and such things like that, like the wheel Dany wanted to break in original Game of Thrones show, a windmill keeps on turning around and around, but in this case, it can turn even if it's burning. Maybe a regular wheel can too, but this one's way up in the air and it's a lot more spectacular and cool. A sure sign of times changing is that neither the Blacks or Greens have an official Master of Whispers until this episode. It's a parallel escalation, but it's also another cycle, because the Master of Whispers is not a new position. It's just come back around again. The story continues to expand in this one. More characters are added, more locations are added. A lot of them are familiar, but with changes, and we're seeing them in a different timeline. Existing characters that we've been focused on so much are starting to spread out. They're not in the same place anymore. That gives us more to talk about, more connections to be made, more details to discuss as the last vestiges of resistance to war fall away and the inevitable approaches. There's a creepy dream, an accursed castle, some dragon action, real dragons that is, and a ton of dragon history, meaning Targaryens. The ancestors and their potential lesser-known children are featured today and named often. And we've got all that and more on this episode of History of Westeros podcast.
Are you just going to keep going longer until I finally say something about it?
About what?
About what?
What? It's a windmill. It just keeps going and going. No, I guess if it was, it doesn't really work. Anyway, hello and welcome everybody. Welcome back to another review episode of House of the Dragon. We're very excited to be here. Always fun to be in the midst of an ongoing season. And this season's going quite well, so we're having a good time, even more than we might have. Every Monday we do this during the season. It's 6 o'clock Eastern. And we do our reviews without spoilers. And Wednesdays, some Wednesdays, not this week, we have a deep dive on a specific topic. Some Wednesdays, like I said. And Saturdays, we do our preview episodes where we have predictions and spoiler talk and stuff from the books that we saw that we don't want to mention because it would be spoilery. But no leaks, never any leaks. And of course, game streams at 6 Eastern on Fridays. We're currently playing House Tarly, but we're going to be restarting soon with a new house. And if you're around, you can help us pick. If you have questions for us, send them to us live here in the chat. Ashea will pick some of them up and put them up for us to talk about. Or you can send them to westeroshistory@gmail.com if you are, for example, hearing this after the fact, not live. Tell us what you liked most, didn't like, favorite performances, Easter eggs, callbacks, stuff you noticed, themes, especially stuff that we missed. That's always helpful because we can't catch it all. We try, but it's impossible. And of course, thank you to those of you who have been supporting us. It's so hectic during this time of year. We're having fun, but it takes up a huge amount of time. So if you're a patron or a supporter, or you send us super chats during live streams, we really appreciate that. But just anything helps. Spreading the word, telling your friends, you are the best salesman, the best pitch for us. If you tell your friends about us, well, that's better than anything we could ever do because your friends trust you and your taste. So we can't beat that.
It's pretty good for Ryan Condal to be talking about it on set. That's pretty good.
That's true. That's true. So, Sean, we'll start with you. What did you think of the episode overall? Let's get your just high-level view and your basic thoughts.
Quick high-level view. I loved it. I think it might be my favorite of the three so far.
Nice.
I wanted to follow up a little with the burning mill, metaphor. I was thinking about the idea that a mill often is grinding grain, like the power of the churning is to grind. It's sort of like the grind of war, and we see bodies ground up on the ground there after the battle that ensued. Also, a mill is usually, a symbol of prosperity. There's a amount of like peace or productivity is coming. A mill is like, generating energy product, food or whatever, and for that to be burned up is a sign of war, is kind of tearing things apart, grinding things to a halt. There's a lot of
less food
up in that.
That's food. That's a great point, Sean. I really like it. It's kind of a metaphor along the lines of Eric Arc. It's like a bigger version of that microcosm of the war and what it causes and what it does to everybody and how it just brings people in there. They don't, even whether they want to be a part of it or not, they're just sucked into it.
And to be burning is also symbolic of like fire and blood, right? That's we're sure, I assume more burning is coming. You even talked about the idea of the mill is up in the air, kind of like dragons are up in the air blowing out fire. I'll say this episode, I think Rita and I spent more time discussing this episode than the other two combined. And it's not because we didn't discuss the other two. It just really stirred a lot of thoughts in me about the idea of, I think of maybe the theme of this episode was, it's too late. There's no going back there. And maybe it was too late a long time ago. I really love the scene Rhaenys was like, well, was it when the boy was killed, or when the dragon killed your son, or when his eye was, like how far back do you have to go before the point of no return happened? I don't know if it was that far back, but I do think they're past it now. I think it's the sad summary of this episode is that Rhaenyra going to talk to Alicent it's just too late. If she had been like, you're right, I'll do whatever you want, it wouldn't have worked for either side. She
doesn't have the power to stop it this way. She can't stop the mill. The mill's burning, the mill's turning, the mill's churning, and there's no stopping it. We do our breakdown episodes, short breakdown episodes as part of this, part of our preparation, and I highly recommend you check those out. One sign that there was more to talk about along the lines of what you're saying there is our breakdown episode is about 25% longer. They're usually around 12 minutes. This one is maybe around 16. It's not fully edited yet. But with that, I sent it over to Ash, who is the one editing said breakdown. And I want to hear your take on this episode.
It's funny. I think I agree with you, Sean. I think this is my favorite of the three. I think it might have some of the lowest lows for me and the highest highs. Like, it might have some of the weakest stuff for me, yet it was still my favorite. Like, just a couple of things. So, like, even if I want to nitpick on things, and I don't think the things I would nitpick on are even what you might guess. It's just, like, I just want more of certain dynamics, like Baela and Rhaena. I wanted more time with Rhaena and Baela, more conversation. Too much was left unsaid. But I loved what we did get. And I loved that we were deepening a lot of those relationships and dynamics a lot. So I found that really great. And I also liked the spooky Harrenhal stuff. I liked seeing Alice Rivers. And honestly, my favorite thing about it was the burning mill sequence. I thought it was just very, very effective filmmaking. Like, the way, like, I found skipping the battle was the most effective way to show how quickly everything just gets out of control. You know what I mean? And so I found it to be just a really effective episode in a lot of ways, despite any niggling complaints I might have.
A lot of times, too, showing the battle can kind of glorify the violence and the heroism or whatever. And maybe there's a place for that, but I don't think this is it. That is not what they want to do at all. They just want to show the tragedy of it.
Yeah, and they cut away before it starts. You don't even know who swings the first blow, what happens from there, how all these other people get involved. So much is left unsaid, but that stuff isn't important. It's like, this is the cost of war. This is what matters. You guys are right. It was very effective. The way they just started small. You see, you're focused on the one Bracken kid. The Bracken kid was a perfect example too. He clearly didn't want to be there. He was like, I have to do this. Like, he was nervous. He was anxious, but he's like, well, this is what a Bracken does when challenged by a Blackwood. The weight of history was on his shoulders, and he was a little dude with small shoulders, and so they focused on him, and then it backs up, and you just see the full devastation, and then you just keep going. You think, oh wow, that's a lot. Oh wow, that's even more. Oh my god, that's so much. It was really effective. I thought that was good.
In terms of performance, though, I think my favorite performance of the episode was a small bit, but was Aemond for me, because I felt that Ewan Mitchell showed just a lot of layers to him putting on his armor while walking naked out of that brothel, like that was him arming himself, and like you just really see that in him. So I felt it was a small part of the episode ultimately, but I think that was my favorite performance. What about you, Sean?
For me, it's been Emma Darcy, hands down by far every episode this season. And she was usually contending for top 2 or 3 last season, but I feel like Patty's not there, and she's getting featured more. They're getting featured more. Rhaenyra is getting featured more. And a lot of times it's very nuanced stuff too. That's I think sometimes I remember Cersei. I remember one of the best moments of acting that I've ever witnessed was as the boat that ostensibly had Marcella on it was approaching, and she realized, that I still can't even quite identify what she did with her face to go from hopeful to devastated, But I feel like Emma Darcy does that constantly. These subtle little shifts in her cheeks and her eyebrows and body language and stuff that it just blows me away. Especially going back watching it 2 or 3 times when you get to pay more attention to the new one. Once you've already absorbed these are the plot points of this episode, and you're looking for symbolism or whatever else, those little subtle acting moments really come through to me. And I think I don't know if she's the best at it or gets the best moments for it or what it is, but I pick her for sure.
Yeah, Emma's very popular, doing super well. Our Facebook group polls, we've been doing those again. This one, Emma just destroyed everybody. They got over 50%. You're allowed multiple choice, so people can vote for more than one person. The next highest was 14%, which is one of the biggest overwhelming. When Patty had his walk into the throne room, that episode I think was one of the other ones that had the most overwhelming, that one, Second was Matt Smith, third was Ewan Mitchell, and fourth, I usually don't mention fourth, but I'm going to mention it this time because it was Sir Simon Russell Beale, aka Sir Simon Strong. So yeah, Sir Simon is Sir Simon, extra cool. He gets bonus points for being Sir Simon in real life and on the show. So there were 2 changes to the intro tapestry: the death of Prince Jaehaerys and the hanging of the Ratcatchers. We've got a full episode breakdown on the intro crawl on the way, though, so we won't talk about that for now. We got that covered elsewhere. But Targaryen history, which is, of course, well covered on that intro crawl as well, is particularly important in this episode. Multiple mentions and influence and vibes of Aegon the Conqueror. Jaehaerys the Conciliator comes up almost as much. Also Baelon the Brave. And then Harrenhal, the history of Harrenhal and the Targaryen role in that, which is overwhelming. That comes up very big. The writer of this episode is David Hancock. He's been credited as a writer for every single episode of the series. But as we know, a single writer is credited, but they never work on them solo. So just take that with a grain of salt. He's credited with this one, but he worked on all of them. He's also a writer for The Crown. So he's worked with Matt Smith before and some of the other folks on the show. And, that was a very successful show. The director is Geeta Vasant Patel, who also directed the finale of this season. So we're going to see her work again. That's her other episode this season. Maybe more Harrenhal. We know we're going to get more Harrenhal, but maybe it's in episode 8 because of that. But anyway, Geeta Vasant Patel, as we pointed out in our preview episode on Saturday, has directed a lot of comedy. And at the end of this episode, the last thing we'll do is go over some of the funniest moments. And there's a lot of them. A lot of really alleviating some of the tension, or just a quip that's funny, like, for example, Mazzari saying it'd be easier to kill her. Things like that. There's a lot of little lines like that. Or
that was a funny because it's true moment, by the way.
It was funny because or the throne. It's like, yeah, it's a big iron chair made of sword, big chair made of swords. See, I can't even say it right, but it was funny. Anyway, let's go to Dragonstone. That's where the episode begins. There, so shall we. Eric Arryk's funeral is the first thing we see. Jace argues for escalation. He's mad that this happened. He was probably friends with Eric, certainly sees him as one of theirs. That was a strike at us. We got to strike back. The escalations are escalating, you could say. Everyone except Rhaenys wants Rhaenyra to just get on with the war, and, well, they have a point. Are they completely right? No, but they have a point.
I just want to say, technically, we don't really start here. We have a cold open.
Right, we have the battle. Yeah, you're right. We start here after the intro. You're totally right. Good correction. The proper point of the episode starts here. But you're right, yeah. Battle of the Burning Mill is the cold open, and it's very effective. So, Rhaenys admits, yeah, we got to try. But she even admits to the possibility that it might be too late. And she speaks to this by saying, yeah, Otto would never have ordered this. Otto would never have ordered this crazy plan. This is someone young and angry and vindictive ordered this, if not all of them, or some group of them. She doesn't know exactly who, and that makes sense. But she's that the young horses have the bit in their mouth or something to that effect.
I think she said hotter blood.
Hotter blood, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And this is pretty much straight from the book. Rhaenyra's delaying of the war, of escalating it. The sources debate why, so the show has to weigh in, and it's not really what the book suggests, but that's okay. We like character development. And she speaks to, so the young people must be in control. She proves very right about that. And as you said at the beginning, the chance to stop the war is indeed probably not there, even though they decide they need to take that chance just in case it's there, because it would prevent so much death. It's even a slim chance to prevent millions of deaths or hundreds of thousands, whatever the number you would throw out there is worth a try. And you kind of respect the attempt, even though as viewers, we know it's kind of hopeless. Some people don't respect the attempt, I suppose, but I do.
I definitely do. That's one thing I thought about specifically, even if it's only a 1 in 100 or 1 in a million chance, a 1 in a million chance to save tens of thousands of lives. Yeah, take that chance for sure,
Yeah. And arguably it fits with the whole idea that so many things are rash. So many things are done quickly without proper consideration. This might be one of them. Going to King's Landing in disguise, just because she's not going there to kill somebody, doesn't mean it isn't a rash decision. Even though she's there for peace, doesn't mean it wasn't made in haste or without proper forethought as to the chances of success versus, what she's risking. So, yeah. Rhaenys is a great line. She says, when the desire to kill and burn takes hold and reason is forgotten. She speaks to the same concepts that the Blackwoods and Brackens are exemplifying with, we don't even know what started it. They don't even know what started it. Eventually, there's going to be so many grievances, so many traumas, that it doesn't even matter what started it. You're in it now. Like, the first thing doesn't matter. You've both done so much damage to each other that is keeping it going. The initial provocation is irrelevant now. And that's true. That's true in life. That's true for a lot of long-running feuds. And it's hard to argue with Rhaenys there. The Black Council's a little farther off the, more ready, shall we say. They're pushing really hard. They even suggest Rhaenyra hide herself. She responds by suggesting that conducting the war without her would be treason. Shuts that down pretty quick. She has a line to Mysaria later that really explains it. She says, hopefully you don't mistake mercy for pliancy, which is what this is. This is mercy, and they see it as maybe pliancy or weakness. And that's interesting because that topic comes up with her father, right? Laurie says, hey, people saw your father as pliable, and he doesn't want to be like that. So it's kind of some sort of parallels are going on here.
Another parallel that's going on here, or maybe a contrast, I feel like Rhaenyra is trying to keep the Black Council in check. They're all raring to go, and she's trying to slow them down.
Yeah. The
Green Council, it's the other way around. Aegon is all raring to go, and everyone's trying to slow him down. Everyone in the council's like, well, let's be careful. Let's get it together first. And he's like, yeah, I'll just fly my dragon in there. And like, hold on a second.
Like, wait, no, that's not part of the plan. You can't just add that. You can't just add a dragon to the plan, just willy-nilly, right? So
I think it's key, too, that's part of why Rhaenys supported Rhaenyra, got Corlys on her side, because she respected the fact that she wasn't rushing in. She's trying to avoid war. And there was a moment when it kind of locked eyes. I think that might have been late at the second. There were 2 Black Council meetings, if I remember right. And I think it's in the second one. But the first time I watched it, I was trying to read what that connection was. And I think that it was Rhaenys, I don't know how to say this, assuring Rhaenyra that you're in control. Do what you think is right. And I think what you think is right is what I think is right, too, which is try to avoid war. Go talk to Alicent. Don't dive in with these dragons.
Yeah, and that's a good point. Yeah, they're kind of seeing eye to eye, even though maybe there's not a lot of optimism. They understand what's going on, and they're unable to really. One thing I would say, there's a little bit of Jon Snow here, where she's not. Rhaenyra's not doing a good job of communicating this to her counselors. She's just kind of saying, "Okay, I've heard your arguments, and I know what's best, but I'm not telling you why." And that I would have liked to see her maybe try to explain that more. But I think maybe they would just argue with her. She kind of doesn't want to, because she's not going to be able to convince them, so it's just kind of pointless. But
also, the thing she's got in the back of her mind right now is, I'm going to sneak into King's Landing and talk to the Queen.
Well, not this early.
There's no way they're going to go for that.
Yeah, they're not going to go for that. I don't think she's thinking that this early, though. Not this early, because she doesn't agree. She doesn't think of doing it. Yeah. Once she opens the letter, then she starts thinking about doing it.
I think in his first one, it ended with her kind of like saying, "Hey, you guys are pushing treason here," and Rhaenys kind of backing her up.
Rhaenys says,
the second one, when she's like, "I'll take your advice into consideration," I think she's thinking about this. Then she goes to talk to Mysaria, right? So one, there's no way they would be okay with this, and two, she's got to keep it secret. She can't let people know that she's even doing this,
Yeah. And that's kind of what I meant about it being rash. If she's not getting anyone else's opinion, or she knows they won't like it, which is why she doesn't ask. And so, yeah, it does look like they're making that mistake, seeing her as pliable or weak when she's just trying to be like a good king or queen, Jaehaerys. And that's the name drop that Rhaenys makes. Like, look who had the longest reign, Jaehaerys. He was the wisest one. He was peaceful. Look what she's trying to do. We've talked about Rhaenyra having a split role, both a queen and a mother. Well, she takes steps to resolve that somewhat and focus on the queen part, try to set the motherhood aside so it's not a distraction. But of course, it's very hard to do this. She doesn't like the idea of herself hiding, but sending away the kids and the young dragons and eggs, that makes sense to her. They're very close to King's Landing. Lots can go wrong. Having them somewhere else makes sense. She's sitting there alone in the room that had her kids, and you get that sense of loneliness. And that's pretty moving, I think, when she's sitting there very sad and without them. Of course, that's jumping ahead a little bit. She has to actually send them away first here, which is what we're talking about. She puts Rhaena in charge of all this, right? That's a big deal. And it comes back to one of our main themes, because it's both duty and sacrifice here. Like, you have to go do this thing that you're not happy about, but it's really important. It's a really big duty. And she's like, I don't want to be a mother figure. I'm a teenager. I want to go fight, blah, blah, which understandable. But her tune changes when the eggs get introduced to the mix. She's like, well, we also need you to care for these eggs. And that's huge, right? That's for her. That's like, oh, okay, well, I still don't want to go do this, but it kind of leaves her in awe. And, it's interesting. There's 3 eggs in the book, and they added a 4th one, which I don't know what that's all about, but it's been confirmed by the director that they had conversations with Ryan Condal and others, and they're saying these are Dany's eggs.
Yeah, and one of them is Viserys' egg, little Viserys.
Ah, of course, right, little Viserys, because he doesn't have a dragon right now. Yeah,
and 3 of them are Dany's.
I initially thought they weren't, because I was thinking of Dany's eggs from the book, and Drogon's egg is black in the book, so I was like, there's no black egg. This can't be Dany's eggs, and nope. Dany's eggs were never black in the show, or none of them were black in the show. So, yeah, it's the light blue one there that would be Viserys's.
Also, they would have darkened and shifted as they turned to stone.
That's true, I suppose. Yeah, that's true. Anyway, they are carried off. They're put aside and in this kind of chamber thing. Now, it's not easy to see them, but there's also 2 dragons in cages, little dragons. There's Tyraxes and Stormcloud. Tyraxes is Joffrey's dragon, and Stormcloud is Aegon's dragon, little Aegon. And, of course, as we just said, Viserys just has an egg, a light blue egg. And the plan is, Rhaenyra says, right, Prince Regio, that's the Prince of Pentos that we saw back in Season 1. And he shouldn't be prince anymore, but whatever. He's probably still powerful or whatever. Maybe he's still prince. I don't think they usually rule that long in Pentos, but that's okay. Small detail. And that's the guy they stayed with when Helena was alive and all that. So they have this connection. So presumably Rhaenyra expects that he'll say, sure, come on over, and then they'll go from the Vale to over there. They'll take ship from presumably Gulltown, which is the big port. Now, Baela and Rhaena part. It's always unnerving to see siblings part in a Game of Thrones type production, right? You're like, will they ever see each other again? You always kind of like, that's the first question. We talked about goodbye brother. Well, this is kind of like goodbye sister. I don't know. What do you think, Sean? I know you have very little to go on here, but do you guess they'll see each other again? Or is this the one of the many tragedies we're setting up for?
Yeah, I might not have that much to go on, but I tell you, I do have quite a few thoughts.
Go for it.
One is that this is a bit of a gamble in the first place. Like, let me back up and even say that the idea that Rhaenyra is like trying to, relinquish some of her motherly duties for her queenly duties. But in a way, this is in itself a motherly duty. She's trying to protect her kids. Like, she knows their targets. Like, there's already been assassins in both castles targeting, so getting them to safety makes sense on a certain level. However, the deal with the Vale was they're going to send a dragon to help protect them. And she's hoping, well, maybe 2 little dragons, we're not quite sending what we promised, And so I wonder if the Vale will keep their agreement and or be safe from assault from other dragons. That's one thing I do have to go on is I know the Vale doesn't get burned down, but that doesn't mean a dragon doesn't land in there. That's happened historically before otherwise, and they might get embargoed or who knows, whatever else. Also, they're assuming she's going to be safe on the voyage there, that dragons won't attack, spies or assassins won't find them, there won't be a shipwreck or something on the way to Pentos. There's like a lot of things have to go right for this. And she is basically putting her legacy, or the Black's legacy, maybe even the Targaryen legacy, on Baela, right? Rhaena.
All her eggs in one basket, you might say.
It's funny because
all the rest of the eggs.
Well, yeah, that's the thing is that Ryan Condal in the behind the scenes and inside the episode, he says this is Rhaenyra not putting all her eggs in one basket because she's splitting them from Dragonstone. But I just don't see it that way because I see it as she is explicitly sending all of her kids, except for Jace, to the same place right now, which really seems silly to me. Personally, I would split them right from the get-go, or I would keep one with me, simply. I know she has Jace with her, but I would keep another.
To jump in, they are being split. The
Eventually.
idea is to go... No, hang on, let me finish. They are going to the Vale, and then Joffrey's supposed to stay there. The other kids are... So they are being split up, just not immediately.
I just think they should split now. I don't even think you send them off in the first place together. I think you already... I think you split them a bunch.
Okay, well, I mean, the plan is to split them quickly. She says, "I need to
put them in 2 baskets. But
you're waiting
both
for
baskets in the same carriage.
You're waiting for a letter to come back from the prince to get permission to go over there. You can't go there until you have permission.
Yeah.
This was a sudden decision to send them away. So the alternative would be to wait for the prince's letter to come back to there and have someone go, which isn't that different. Like
I think that's what you should do.
Yeah, okay. Well, I disagree, but it's debatable. Let's move on.
So there's pros and cons to either approach, but
yes.
That's my other thought here too was that like you said, this is like this parting. Like, here's all our treasures, here's all our family. Bye now. I hope you make it safe. Like, I am fearful, especially. I don't know details, but I get the idea from the fandom that this is a tragic, gruesome, awful story. There's already been a child beheaded. Like, I don't think it's crazy that someone goes to Pentos and burns up whatever castle they're in, or goes to the Vale, or catches them on the way. Like, absolutely. I'm scared for all these characters. Yeah. That's all I'm saying. I am super scared.
This relationship is really interesting between Baela and Rhaena. They're being split, and they're twins, yet so much of the reason of them splitting is circumstances out of their control. Ashaya, there was really interesting behind-the-scenes preparation done for this conversation, wasn't there?
Yeah, in an interview with Geeta Patel, she talked about how, in order to prepare Baela and Rhaena's actors, Phoebe Campbell and Bethany Antonia, to really feel the depth of their relationship and the weight of their dynamic, she had them argue with one another at length and build up all of these different resentments and whatnot that they would have had for one another that would lead Baela to seem kind of casually haughty, and Rhaena, she kind of always got the short end of the stick, and they would just feel this dynamic between them. And I did feel that, which is what made me want so much more of seeing them snipping at each other. I wanted more conversation and less of Rhaena just in thought. But Phoebe Campbell, they did definitely show how dissatisfied Rhaena was with this situation. I think they did a good job at showing it, and I felt for them. I felt for Rhaena very much.
Same. They were not wanting to be sidelined, and the duty was the duty. The sacrifice is the sacrifice.
The moment when Rhaenyra is presenting this mission to her, she's really hoping that she'll just be on board with it. She's like, please volunteer for this. And her response is yes, queen, I'll do what you're making me. You know, like
I can't promise to make you happy, but this is really
she's
important.
dutiful. She doesn't tell Rhaenyra she's unhappy with it, but she does tell.
Clearly,
but she does let on to her sister. But she is clearly like she does what she's told, and that's one of the other things they talked about is how Baela is kind of the rebel in the relationship, and it kind of irks or needles at her that she gets rewarded, she gets the dragon, she gets to do everything, and Rhaena's the one who has to go be nursemaid to these kids.
I didn't even catch that. That's kind of a parallel between Alicent and Rhaenyra, right? Alicent feels like I'm doing everything I'm supposed to do, and she's running around breaking the rules. She gets to be queen. You know, I can see that resentment.
It's a big, absolutely a parallel here. I wrote several other ones alongside Alicent and Rhaenyra as a parallel to them. It's also Robert and Stannis are similar. Robert is very loose and easy and great at fighting. He doesn't have a dragon, but he's got kind of the equivalent of an inborn dragon. He's a way better warrior than Stannis. Stannis was none of those things. He's not loose, not easy, not great at fighting. You know, not great with talking to people. Yeah, so the rule breaker versus the guy that does what he wants. Everything works out for him until it doesn't. Ditto Jaime and Cersei, though, really neither of them are big on rules. The point is Cersei says if she had a sword or was a man, she would get away with the things Jaime does, etc. And technically Baela's the older one, so it is kind of the the older sibling gets everything in a society like this. That vibe is there as well. Let's talk about Driftmark. Rhaenys brings dinner to her husband, reminding us that they are one of the few reasonably functional couples in the entire story. This set wasn't planned for rain. They were not supposed to film this scene in the rain necessarily. It just kind of happened, and they just, went with it. It's an island. Things would happen. Why not just, hey, it's rain? It's funny because this is supposed to be a dry dock, and it's, that's not literally dry. It just means that it's a place where ships are built on land, but it was very much not dry. It was a wet dock. And it was huge. It's an enormous set. There's very little green screen in this thing. The only stuff that's CGI is the stuff way in the distance. Like none of what's on screen now is all practical. That's all real. Only the horizon and the buildings in the far distance are green screen. So it was really big. And that's saying something because there's also the massive set Harrenhal and the massive Red Keep. And there's just so many huge sets for the show. Rhaenyra, Corlys refers to Rhaenyra's lack of action as well. He's also wondering when they're going to get to it. He calls them the ditherers of Dragonstone. Rhaenys doesn't mention that she's one of the ones arguing for the delay, but that's because she's got another thing she wants to talk to him about. She also doesn't expect the last-ditch attempt to work. So there's no point in her arguing with him about it. But she presses him on the matter of Driftmark. And he's kind of changed his tune. It's kind of annoying her, I think. He was fine giving Driftmark to Luke, and Luke was like, I don't know anything about ships. I get seasick. But, that was the situation. But when it comes to giving it to his younger brother, who's the same, he's like, I don't want to do that. Or Rhaena, who he's like, I don't want to do that either. I'm like, but what's the difference here? What's the problem? He doesn't have a straight answer. And she's like, well, what are you going to do? Those are the only two options. She's like, we'll figure it out. She's like, what do you mean we'll figure it out? What the hell are you talking about? But he leaves. So the discussion's over. So yeah, let me get your take on this one, Sean. What do you think is going on here? This whole Driftmark plot is just really, really hiding some stuff here. They're really there's some unresolved things going on, huh?
I feel like Rhaena should definitely be it for multiple reasons. One, the actual Valyrian bloodline, if there's any concern for that, she has it, right? And two, they're trying to buck this idea if it has to be a male that inherits. Well, you have this woman that can inherit. I can't believe that Corlys is even wavering in any way about this. And never mind the fact that she's like, we don't have to, you're about to go off to war. If you die, then what do we do? This whole dilemma comes from that, right? This is just a smaller version for the Valyrian house, but that's the whole dilemma going on with the Targaryen house, right?
Yep.
He's just making the same mistake as Viserys, except maybe even worse by not even. Maybe it's better by not even decided at all. Maybe that means Rhaenys does get to decide if he dies, and I don't know, but it definitely seemed like he was being inexplicably uncooperative. Maybe he doesn't want to face the reality of it or something, I don't know. Maybe he's got some other idea up his sleeve or something. I don't know.
Maybe. All right, let's talk about the riverlands. We talked about the burning mill a bit already, but there's some more things to say, of course. First of all, the riverland. Why is the riverland so important? Well, it's been brought up by both sides as the most important region for several reasons. Part of that is simply that so many of the other regions have already decided for one side or another, so it's settled, at least for now. The Vale is marching for the Blacks, so is the North. The West is for the Greens. Most of the Reach is too, but not all of it, as Alicent and Otto discussed with regard to the Tyrells and all that. So that's a developing situation, but most of the Reach seems to be for the Greens. The Crown Lands, well, that's about to be fought over. It looks like Cole is headed to some nearby Crown Lands houses with his plan. Now, Baratheon's a little interesting because they're for the Greens, but there's no word. They don't mention that there's troops massing or troops on the march. It just isn't mentioned, which is like, and they should have a tighter connection than most of these because there's a marriage alliance. There's a Aemond Baratheon marriage already. Well, betrothal. It's not a marriage yet. Iron Isles is up in the air, but no one's going to go there to fight over it because it's so far away, so remote. Maybe a dragon could go there and burn it, but Dalton Greyjoy has been mentioned. So, that is a thing. It remains to be seen what role the Iron Isles will have in the show, but we do discuss the Red Kraken, Dalton Greyjoy, in a separate episode, scripted episode with Radio Westeros that's available to patrons and subscribers. So both of them talk about all these things. The Riverlands, that makes that not only are they in the center, which can enable them to maybe cut off some of the other armies, but they're the closest to King's Landing, and they're undeclared. So they must be claimed. It's a huge amount of soldiers up in the air. The number 40,000. Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead, Sean.
Yeah, I was going to say being in the center is very important because if the Lannisters want to bring their armies across to King's Landing, well, they got to pass through the Riverlands, right?
Yeah.
That almost any army that needs to move from one territory to another has to cross through there. So either being stopped, having to fight their way through there versus facilitated on the way through there is huge.
Yeah,
right?
It's very huge. Yeah, like, for example, if the Greens controlled the Riverlands, the North wouldn't be able to get their troops through, or the Vale. They'd have to either take ship or something like that. So so the contrast is if they do control the Riverlands, then they've got an easy time bringing those troops through and maybe bringing them all together, which is
and stopping
surely
the Western troops from coming.
And cutting them off from King's Landing. So it's a really big deal. This is you can understand strategically why both sides have reached a similar, if not nearly identical, conclusion. Now, here's a funny thing about the numbers. Damon mentions that there's 40,000 swords in the Riverland. That's considerably more than A Song of Ice and Fire, but there's a sensible and simple explanation for it. Robert's Rebellion was less than 20 years before the beginning of A Song of Ice and Fire. A lot of people died in that. And at this point in history, not only has there not been a war in the Riverlands for a long time, not since Maegor fought some faith in there, and which wasn't nearly as bad as the War of Five Kings. There was the golden age of Targaryen rule, Jaehaerys and Alysanne, that we're not that far removed from, where the Riverlands prospered probably as much as it had in probably 1,000 years, given all the war-torn eras that came before it and ruled by other kingdoms. So that's why they're so strong right now.
There's also the strong possibility that the numbers are being inflated. Like, if it's 37,000 or 35,000, they're going to round up to 40. Like they
well, sure, but that would be true for all the regions. So that I don't know if that probably just comes out in the wash. But anyway, it remains to be seen, and of course, people will die in the process. But that's a lot of soldiers that one side doesn't want the other side to have, and would certainly like to have on theirs. People like Ironrod and Sir Simon point out that the Blackwoods and Brackens will use any excuse to fight each other. And it's hard to argue that. This creates compelling responsibility for a would-be ruler. Rhaenyra learned that just saying, I want Prince Aemond, went horribly wrong for her. She did not intend for a kid to be killed over that, but nevertheless, she takes part responsibility for it. We have the same thing here. This is Blackwood kid who is named Davos, apparently. And a little word on that. It's Davos Blackwood and Aeron Bracken, according to the subtitles. But Ryan Condal told us in the interview that we did, so y'all may have heard this already. But for the rest of you, and this bears repeating anyway, they don't give names to a lot of these characters. They didn't name Willem Blackwood and Gerald Blackwood in season 1, those two that fought each other, and the kid killed the bigger Bracken guy. They did not give them names. A different part of the show team, like the marketing department or somebody, gave them names. And Ryan's like, oh, well, we didn't do that. Because they don't want to give names that conflict with canon. This is their way to just kind of dodge that. So at least these are names that aren't used. So this is just some other brother or some other cousin. That's fine. That's not a big change. People are annoyed more when they take an existing character and use them differently, which they didn't seem to do here. There's definitely differences between book and show version of this battle, but the result's pretty much the same in terms of how it's going to affect the greater picture.
If I remember right, the context of what Ryan Condal said was not just that they don't want to like disrupt established canon, but they want to keep their options open for future canon. Like new shows they make later, they might want to be able to say this or that person was this or that person's ancestor or battle or whatever. So they don't want to pigeonhole themselves by naming them now if they don't have to. So.
Good point. So the Blackwood kid Davos, he calls Aegon no true king, while his equivalent Aaron Bracken says Rhaenyra is a baby killer. So they're already like arguing over the blacks and greens and using it as leverage to restart their own fight that even they don't remember what started it. And it's good detail here. Remember what's said at council. Not just at council in the Green Council, but at Harrenhal, when the mention of Grover Tully comes up. Yes, that's another Muppet Tully. Grover Tully, they talk about how his vassals aren't obeying him. And what does Davos Blackwood here say? He's like, F the ass-eyes. Because Bracken's like, well, the ass-eyes at River Run. He's like, F the ass-eye. Like, so he's basically saying that. He's like, I don't care what Lord Tully says. We're not, this is that disobedience. Of course, starting a fight is a bigger act of disobedience, but it goes to show that the little bits of disobedience were there to set up this bigger act of disobedience. And I like how that's very consistent throughout greens and blacks and just the way the metaphors are used. And it's interesting, too. It comes up later. Damon hasn't heard of it. He's like, Blackens and Brackwoods hate each other, huh? It's like, whoa, you're like the one guy who hasn't heard of this, man. But I like it. He's a Targaryen that's just in his bubble and doesn't give a crap about the history of Westeros. He's deeply rooted in Targaryen history, but he doesn't care about the history of the Riverlands or history of the Vale. That's none of that. It goes right past him. But it's kind of shocking to hear that he doesn't know anything about it. He's like, why do they hate each other? It's like he hasn't even heard of this conflict.
He not only does he and many Targaryens live in Ivory Tower, but he went to live in an Ivory Tower on another continent even. So.
yeah, right. It's more like something closer to an obsidian tower, really. But hey, it's, same difference. Same point. So I love that. Yeah, really good job with this, and I'm curious where it will go. Let's go to Harrenhal. Let's go nearby the burning mill over to Harrenhal. How freaking cool was this landing scene? The flight in darkness through the clouds with the approach over Isle of Faces and all those shots. Just super cool, right, Sean? This was really awesome, wasn't it?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I gotta say that was that the perspective of Damon looking down his dragon at the castle beneath him. That's I don't know. I believe he's riding a dragon. I don't know how else to say it. Like they're coming at it from all different angles. I feel like in the past. It's been coming along for a few years, special effects and camera work and everything, but just more than ever, they don't have to, I don't know how to say it's like fudge anything. They don't have to like show them getting a saddle, and that for now on, the cuts are always like from the chest up.
Yeah.
You can see every angle from every direction fully, it's really, they've immersed the dragons into reality.
Yeah, it's fantastic. There's lots of history here. Damon is repeating some history or at least channeling it. Balerion, when he burned Harrenhal with Aegon as his rider, you're making it about Balerion, not Aegon, came at night as well. He attacked at night to make it harder for them to shoot at him. Smart play. And the first tower he burned is Kingspire Tower, and it was called that because the king was in the tower when it was burned, King Harren. And, well, that's where he lands. He lands on Kingspire Tower to announce his arrival. And it's like, yeah, okay, that's not symbolic. Another dragon landing on the very place where the king landed. And he's maybe not quite as dangerous, but in some ways maybe is more dangerous. And It's depicted in the intro crawl. We've talked about it quite a lot in History of Westeros. This is a pretty big moment, the burning of Harrenhal and Aegon's conquest and all that. But as he's walking around the castle, he gets down. No one's there. No one confronts him. He's walking around with his sword. And behind the scenes, it said that he wants a fight. Like, he's looking for a fight. He's almost disappointed that it was so easy. And he comes up on the spot where the Great Council was, and that's a really great moment. He's looking out over the railing there, and it's right before that trailer shot we'd seen a bunch of times where the light's coming through, and he's kind of moved. He stares at it for a minute. He looks at it. He's probably remembering what happened and how important that moment was. There's also House Strong banners. You can barely see them on either side there. It's dark, and so you can't see the color that would be present. House Strong has the colors of the trident. The blue, green, and red. Kind of like your shirt there, Sean, but you've got yellow instead of... and that's Star Trek, not the trident. But hey, it's close enough. Star Trek, House Strong, pretty similar.
They both have S's.
Yeah.
It's also worth noting those banners are part of probably the discoloration is from being burned. Like, the edges look black and frayed. There's probably soot and such on them from probably the fire that Laura started, right?
Yeah, good point, yeah. And there's echoey sounds. It's supposed to be ghostly, and you're supposed to get a sense of why the place is considered cursed. There's a flight of bats, which is pretty cool. That's the sigil of House Lothston, who will be the next house to rule after the Strongs. And they have a sigil. Yeah, they have a single bat as their sigil. And then the house that rules after the Lostons is the Wents. And they have 9 bats as their sigil because they were household knights of the Lostons. There's weirwood roots growing in various places inside. We did confirm those are weirwood roots. It's just the heart tree is expanded enough to break through the castle and all that. And note the weirwood itself. It's stretching towards the Isle of Faces. Shout out to Glidus. I know a few people caught this, but he's the first one I saw to catch this, that it looks like it's reaching towards its others, its community, its network over there on the Isle. That's a great catch and a great thing for them to have put in.
You know, Game of Thrones and George Martin in general is thought of as sort of this fantasy drama adventure, which it is. But I think if you're going to attach the next qualifying genre on there, and to Martin's writings in general, it's probably horror, maybe mystery and horror. And I think both those were demonstrated well in this cinematography. Like, it seemed like this was spooky. You're waiting for something to jump out of the corner, for their monster to be there. Damon's a little scared, even if maybe he's confident, ready for battle, but this isn't what he was expecting. Does that make sense? This sort of like dark, abandoned, rainy hallways, and sure enough, it gets a little bit more specifically haunting in the next scene, or one of the next couple scenes. But
yeah, the only other time he's probably been here is during the Great Council, and that's when, like, all the lords of the realm were there. So it would not have had this vibe of being empty. And
in fact, it was almost like a city, because all the lords and their entourages, there was like maybe tens of thousands of people maybe had converged on Harrenhal for that. And now it's just this empty, abandoned. And that does also add, I didn't even think about that, but it adds to how perplexed he is by how abandoned and fallen, the state of disrepair that it's in, is the term they used. Yeah.
Well, that's why one of the things I liked so much about this spooky Harrenhal sequence was that there was kind of an undercurrent of humor actually in it, and that he's like waiting and thinks it's all spooky, and then he gets in there and it's just like his family at dinner, Sir Simon, and he just like speaks to him, and he's just kind of like underwhelming, and like, so there's just like, I found it humorous.
It's so mundane. He's like, yeah, this place is creepy, but we're normal.
Yeah.
We're just having dinner, and I'm not going to fight you. I mean, look at you. You have that armor. You have a dragon. Like, what am I? I'm an old guy. Like, I'm not going to fight you. Come on. So, yeah, he says, I'm claiming Harrenhal. And they're like, it would appear so. It's like, yes.
You want some peas?
Yeah. So it is funny.
Sorry.
Yeah, so it's like, sorry about that. Yeah. And part of the reason this scene is so funny is you got some really talented actors going to work here. This is Sir Simon Russell Beale, who our friend Robert, aka In Deep Geek, a lot of y'all have seen his videos, very popular channel. We write videos for his channel as well. He told me that just today, actually, that Sir Simon Russell Beale is like the guy in England for theater, for stage acting. He's like generational talent, or is recognized as such in the Shakespearean circles and all that. So there's got to be more of him. They didn't one-off him here, and of course, why would they? It looks like there's clearly more to come in this at Harrenhal. B, that's part of why the scene is so good. The dialogue is so good. You got just some extreme talent going here. Someone who really knows their business, and it is a great scene. He nails. He kneels. His sons kneel with him, but Alice Rivers doesn't not. She just walks in and kind of gives a look, and he looks back at her, and then just kind of looks back and ignores her for the meantime. We'll come back to her in a minute. Let's talk about Alice Rivers separately. He points out how damp the place is, and and that's really important and apparent. It's like, oh yeah, well that's true. He says, well, your kin is Larry Strong. Like, how am I supposed to feel about this? Like, oh, that dude, Clubfoot, he's no lord of mine. That's a pretty convincing repudiation, wasn't it, Sean?
It was, and the first watch, I noticed that there was a pause when he asked about it. And remember, too, I was already wondering, like, everyone's heading to Harrenhal, but the Lord of Harrenhal is at the Red Keep on the side of the Black. Doesn't he have any say or opinion or control or anything over this? And it seems like maybe not me. He's too caught up in the intrigue of the capital and the war pending than this house that he inherited, which maybe isn't his ambition in the first place. And maybe he'll get to it eventually. I'm curious exactly what he thinks about that, what's going on, at least with his hopes or intentions. But whatever they are, he's not connected. He's too physically far apart, and doesn't seem to be. We haven't heard any stories of him sending ravens or having control, or this guy seems to have disdain for him. So, oh shoot! I had a thought I was building up to, and I lost what it was. Oh, I remember when Damon first asks him, he pauses a moment, and Damon says something to the effect of, you know, he's sitting on that false counsel, da da da, and then Simon speaks up and lays into Larys. And the first time I thought that he was holding back because he wanted to make sure he didn't say the wrong thing to Damon. He wanted to make sure he knew what side Damon was on. And once Damon would seem to be against him, okay, I'm against him too. But when you watch it a second time, I feel like he was going to sell it no matter what.
He was just waiting. Like he didn't want to interrupt, but he's just waiting for a chance to talk. Yeah.
He seemed pretty genuine about his frustration with Larys. And maybe would have been a little more tactful if he thought that Damon was on the other side. But I think he was going to make it clear that he didn't respect or trust that guy, maybe even at the risk of his own life, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think also him referring to Larys as Clubfoot speaks to the sense that Larys might feel from his family that he is not maybe beloved, and I don't know. But I would guess that Simon would have called him Clubfoot even before he killed his father and brother, is my point.
That's entirely possible. Yeah, that's entirely possible.
Maybe that's part of why Larys didn't have as much trouble doing it. He already felt like, screw all those people. They don't respect me.
Maybe.
I might as well murder them.
It does give a little extra credit to his arson guy for getting the fire going and all that. You know, It's like, boy, that arson guy is good.
Maybe that's what he's in jail for.
Yeah, well, maybe that's why they should have kept him there, because he's already burned down 2 big ones. Yeah. So it's pretty convincing, like I said. You seem to agree, but Damon's taking no chances. He refers to how easy it would be to kill a dragon rider with poison. At this point in Targaryen history, we don't know anyone who was killed by poison, except maybe Aenys, but that's only a possibility, and it's definitely not even. Yeah, it wasn't even necessarily poison that killed him. It's not clear, but there's no obvious example of someone being killed by poison. So you could read that a certain way. That could be foreshadowing. Or it could just be common sense, because common. Killing someone with a dragon, that seems easier than trying to kill the dragon, especially in battle. I love this overhead shot of the dining room table. Really cool. It kind of shows the distance between them and just the emptiness of the place and just how much extra space there is. And it just looks cool, and it is a little bit of visual storytelling as well. Damon tells Sir Simon he wants to repair the castle and make it fit for armies to gather and eventually take the throne. And he's like, oh, wow, that's pretty ambitious, but okay. It's interesting, the whole Your Grace thing. What did you read into that, Sean? He wants to be called Your Grace, and it's not normal for the king consort to be called Your Grace. So is this him being what Rhaenyra said? Or is this him just wielding extra authority because of the bits about, oh, well, we're all disorganized, we're in disrepair, they're ignoring their liege lord, or is maybe a little of both?
It might be a little of both. Kind of like I said before, I think that Damon is, acting on behalf of Rhaenyra because it lets him have more power. But if she doesn't, he'll do things she doesn't want. He'll do whatever she wants and whatever she doesn't want, all in her name. Does that make sense? Like I did think that it was very hypocritical when Simon called him my prince, and he corrected him to your grace, and he's like, well, I just assumed since Rhaenyra is the queen that I would call it. He's like, well, that's the peril of assumption. Well, what should he have done if he had called you your grace in the first place? That also would have been an assumption, and more of an assumption that you easily could have chastised him for also. So I feel like this is also Damon being a bully, in addition to being a hypocrite.
Yes.
And basically seizing more power. It's all the things about him that frustrate me. We're all happening here. One other thing, as much as I overall wanted to overall did love the scene, the performance, everything, the writing, but I wanted to like Simon Strong there because he seemed to understand the potential danger. I think he walked the exact right line of not just being a total coward. Does that make sense? They would have lost respect from Damon if he'd been like, oh, don't kill me, please. I think he knew that he needed to be lordly, but also be subservient. And I think he did a really good job. And so I was starting to like this guy. And it also makes sense. Maybe he's a little out of sorts because he's mad that Larius killed his family members, but also to insult him by calling him a club fit, rubbed me the wrong way a little. But he was also a little too happy to call Damon your grace. I feel like he's like, oh, cool, good. We're going to have a man as a king. Rhaenyra is not really the queen. You'll be the king. That seemed to be what I was getting from their interchange. And I feel like
I didn't get that.
There's going to be a lot of it.
I didn't get that. That's interesting. I'm not saying you're wrong, but I definitely did not get it that way. I thought he was just playing along like, okay, you're your grace now. I didn't read anything extra into it. That's interesting, though.
I suppose a little of both for him also.
Yeah. So definitely more to come there. It's really interesting. One other thing about this scene that I thought was notable and is very subtle is that he points out how the Bracken-Blackwood conflict happens in part because Lord Grover Tully doesn't have control over his vassals, just like Lord Jasper Ironrod is going to point out the same thing because he's sick and infirm. This upsets Damon a little bit because people did the same thing to his brother. They didn't do what they were supposed to do. They were a little slack. They kind of got away with things while Viserys was sick, especially Otto, especially while he was on Milk of the Poppy, things like that. So Damon is very sensitive to that whole thing. He's like, they should still obey even when he's sick. And so that's just like, I thought that was pretty cool. Like under the radar, like sneaky little, that's the kind of thing that's going to annoy Damon. And he's already annoyed.
Yeah. Both in general, he's worried about, I don't know, his brother's legacy or the respect his brother got or didn't get. But also very specifically, his brother said Rhaenyra is the queen.
Yes, that's
Why are we even having this war?
Yeah.
We should have listened to what the king said. Just because he's
Good
sick
point.
doesn't mean not to listen. So,
very good point. Yeah. Let's talk about the dream. The dream was very cool, and it begins so mundane. Like he's just a dude in his room that's annoyed by all the dripping. It really is a very good way to fool us into thinking he's awake. Like, did not see the dream part coming until it's really obvious that it's a dream. Like, until it's really not a dream until it obviously is. Maybe you could figure it out by the weird thing with the feet and the shaking of the door. But I just thought it was clever how they built that up. And then all of a sudden you're like, whoa, Millie Alcock, what the hell? And
I thought they were going the haunted direction, I thought that was going to be the ghost of
Harrenhal.
Lionel Strong or something,
burning ghosts. Yeah, Arya talks about burning ghosts when she's there. That's something that old Nan tells her about. Technically, it's fiery spirits, but same thing, burning ghost, right? And she accuses him. Wait, hold on. Let me back up. Did you have an immediate guess as to who might that be, or were you just like, who is that, or was it just too quick for you to even think about it? I thought it was Emma. I thought it was Emma at first, which not Emma Darcy. I mean Emma Aaron, Viserys's wife.
Yeah, as he was coming up from behind, I just thought it was going to be some other resident of the council, maybe a princess or a chambermaid, or it didn't occur to me that it was going to be a significant figure. I was going to say a minute ago, like I've heard the name Alice Rivers, But I didn't know that was Alice Rivers in that room a moment ago.
Yeah, Alice Rivers is the one with the black hair that tells him he's going to die there. Yeah, so she accuses him. It's like his subconscious speaking to him. It's really well done. It's efficient. It speaks directly to what's on his mind and what he should feel guilty about, I think. She says, "You're always cleaning, you're always leaving and I'm left behind to clean up your messes." And she's sewing Prince Jaehaerys' neck back on, and he is stunned. He's moved. He feels guilty, I think. It looks like that. All these emotions, and it's like, it's also the moment you realize it's clearly a dream. And he also, in behind the scenes, reveals that's when the Damon, realizes it's a dream too.
I think the word you're looking for is shook. He
was shook. Yeah, he was very shook.
Also, I wonder when they filmed that, because I don't feel like I bet they filmed that a couple years ago. I bet they didn't film that. I think she would have aged up more than that.
No, you're wrong, Sean. Simply put, you're wrong.
Really? Okay.
Just that straightforward. She looks just like that just now. Still, she has not aged, and they filmed that recently.
Yeah, it's only been 2 years.
Yeah,
not even 2 years.
I mean, how old is she though?
In her early 20s.
Okay,
like 21, early 20s.
So he comes to while staring at the heart tree, which is another just wow, because we all associate dreaming with heart trees. So that's just a really cool moment. Somehow he's already set his sword down. It's sitting there leaning on the root to his left, and which indicates sleepwalking, I guess. He looks genuinely afraid. He's looking around like, what the hell just happened? He's outdoors, and like, she comes up, Alice Rivers walks out and says, "You will die in this place." And he looks afraid. And this is a man that didn't look afraid at all when soloing 100 pirates. You know, so that really says something that he's shook here. What do you think, Sean? Is Alice Rivers telling the truth that he's going to die there?
I mean, I don't know what makes her think she knows that, but I don't think it's a wild guess to make, right? Like,
yeah,
maybe she has some actual prophetic ability that she's seen a video, but also it's just a safe guess. Like, he's someone putting himself in harm's way. War's on the way. Armies are meeting at this strategic location. You know, like, it's
when she said "in this place," she meant Westeros. You will die.
Yeah,
in this country,
also,
in this world,
big enough to. Yeah.
You are not immortal.
Riverlands might have been, you know.
Yeah, so that is Alice Rivers on screen there. Yeah, Sean, you don't know hardly anything about her. We'll talk about her more later, because it would be hard to keep it unspoilery without saying more about her. But a few things we can say is that she's played by Gayle Rankin, a veteran actress, has been in shows like Glow and what's that other one, Ashaya?
What's the other show? I know her from Glow.
Okay, there's another famous one. I just can't think of it. Anyway, doesn't matter. And Rivers means she's a bastard, right? A bastard of the Riverlands, maybe of House Strong, and in the book that's suggested, but even the book isn't sure. So it's another one of those things where the sources aren't clear on her heritage or how old she is. So it's kind of neat. There's a little bit of mystery around her, and very curious to see how the show handles the rest of her. Any other comments before we move on?
Quick, I don't know, joke. I would have put more in her prophecy if, rather than saying "you will die in this place," she said "you will die this season." That would have meant more to me.
Yeah, I think if you are looking for more talk on Alice Rivers, you're gonna want to tune in, especially on our Saturday stream or preview stream when we can talk spoilers, because I just think it's gonna be so hard for us to speculate much without dealing with that. But no, she is very much unknown. Like, there's a lot of directions they can go with her. So even as book readers, we're a little unclear on some details. Like, she could be the bastard half sister, for example, of Larys and Harwin, but she might not be. We don't know for sure right now, and so that's pretty cool.
It's possible the show will decide to tell us that. Like, sometimes the show weighs in on things like that, but this is one of those ones where I would not assume that. In other spots, they kind of need to, but not necessarily this one. If you are enjoying our coverage this season, please consider joining us on Patreon. You get lots of stuff out of it, you know? You get to dodge a lot of our, if not most of our ads. We have an ad-free RSS feed on Patreon that you can also access through Spotify. And all those bonus episodes are ad-free, so you get quite a bit. You get ad-free episodes of the regular stuff, and you get a lot of back catalog filled with great historical deep dives, scripted and unscripted. I think most of our bonus episodes are scripted content, but we've got a few non-scripted ones as well. And there's a lot of ways for you to join. You can head over to historyofwesteros.com and follow the link, or just go straight to History of Westeros' Patreon, which is patreon.com/historyofwesteros. And there's a bunch of different levels you can sign up at. We've got different pledge levels that come with different benefits, different titles. You can get a cool title from us. We'll make up a title for you. And a lot of people have fun with that. We have fun making the titles, and we give them shout outs occasionally during scripted content. So check that out. Once again, it's patreon.com/historywesteros, or just go to our website, historywesteros.com. A couple of questions from y'all. Cannibal the Dragon says, why didn't she send any of her children to Winterfell or hide out at the Wall? If you know dragons can't go beyond the Wall, that's a safe place. Yeah, I mean, Book Rhaenyra does the same thing. It makes the same decision. Like, that's an ally up the north she could have leveraged that she doesn't leverage, and maybe that would have been safer to hide them up there. Maybe she just doesn't know. She wants to go somewhere that she's experienced. I mean, she didn't go to Pentos, but she has. Yeah, I don't know. It would have been a good choice, but I think she wanted to keep them maybe more in contact or more raised in a place that's got more similar culture. But it would have been a fine option. But we're not told why. We're not given some sort of like decision process where she pros and cons all the different locations that they could go.
I can imagine one reason might be it's just farther away. It would take longer to get there, longer to retrieve them, longer to get messages about them, and maybe just we have heard a couple hints of winter coming, so it might not be safe for a baby in that cold weather.
Yeah, that would
again,
be my
maybe
thought.
She still should have, but I do see reasons why she did it. You know?
Yeah, that would be my thought. Well, that would be my thought, is that she doesn't want to send them up north, and it's harder to get up there. It would take longer, a lot of details with that. But also, I think if she'd had a conversation with people about this, where she talked about, like, well, here are our options, what should we do? And that had been like a topic between her and some folks, maybe Jace would have suggested it, and maybe it would have happened. But I don't think she I don't think it was ever a conversation where she was like, well, what should I do? She just decided to do this, and I don't know.
Yeah, I can even imagine her not having that conversation, similar to trying to sneak in to speak to Alicent. She might not want that many people to have the knowledge of where she sent her kids and the dragon egg. She might want to keep that under wraps. But it seems like Jace is a safe person to tell, right?
yeah, that's true. But
and once they do, it was a pretty public exodus that they made. There were like 20 people there that know about it. So I don't know. Can't really expect to keep that much of a secret. Adding to my concern for their safety.
Another good aspect there is that Curtis Franks points out that she has family in the Vale. She's related to the Aarons. You know, her mother, Aemma Arryn, was an Arryn, so there's a slight familial connection why she might feel that her kin is safest with, you know, some relatives.
Good point. Buttercup Bravo says, the girls not being out to sea are partially on him here, him being Corlys. They never show Lena or Laenor actually going out either, so it's strange. Well, Laenor does sail. That is, we don't see him doing it, but it's spoken of. He definitely sails. Lena just loved to fly, so she just maybe wasn't much of a sailor because she had Vhagar. I mean, I don't know. I probably wouldn't sail a whole lot either if I had a dragon. And that's kind of the same with Joffrey and Luke, but not the same with Rhaena, who explicitly doesn't have a dragon. So yeah, they could be. Now, in a time of peace, it's a bigger problem. Now they've been so close to the edge of war here for a while. It's like, when do they have time for just sailing just to learn how to sail? Corlys has been rather busy, and he's been recovering from his like horrible injury, and his ship is broken. He doesn't have time for that. He did before, but he doesn't anymore.
He also could appoint someone to do it.
Yeah, true.
And they being at war might be all the more reason to get ready and learn and train. Like, Aemon has a dragon, but he studied history and philosophy and the sword. Like, and it wasn't Viserys teaching him, right? Like, you can have other people teaching the kids all these things that they need to learn about. If you're, you know, I feel like it's irresponsible and or sexist of Corlys to have not prepared these girls or kids or whatever for their roles, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, I would say it's sexist with you, except that he didn't seem to do it to the Valarian boys either. It's just It's just irresponsible.
So just irresponsible, not purely sexist.
Well, and if we want to argue in his case here, he's like, well, I'm not going to make someone a sailor who doesn't want to be. Like, if they're not interested in sailing, I can't make them be. It's not something you force them into it. That's not going to make them a sailor. You can put them on a boat. They're not going to be. That doesn't make them a sailor. You know what I mean?
We could have had a scene. In this scene, Corlys could have said, I tried, and they didn't take to it. They got sick every time.
Well, Joffrey, that's fair. Maybe with Rhaena, not with Joffrey, though, because he's like 6 years old.
And there are plenty of examples of fathers pushing their kids into things they don't want to do, and they become good at it anyway.
Right, but he's not their father. They're not his kids. Yeah, I agree with you otherwise. Like, if it was his own kids, he would definitely be putting them out to sea because they're Valarians. It's like, yeah, you got to go. As I said, Laenor was a sailor, even though he was a dragon rider. He might have forced it on Lena if it weren't for the fact that he had a son already that was going to inherit. Anyway, let's move on. Bill Sotheby says, why is it not normal? All the queens who marry the kings are called Your Grace. Why is it different? I don't know. It should. You're right. You make a good point. Like, Cersei was called Your Grace. She's the queen by marriage, not the queen sitting on the throne. So it's just not customary. It's maybe it is sexist, or maybe it's not sexist, but implied misogyny within the culture, because, well, he's never seen a king consort before. When there hasn't been one. There's literally not been one in his lifetime or the entire history of the Iron Throne. So he just got it wrong, I think. So maybe I was wrong. I should have said it's not normal. Yeah, I guess it probably is normal. Well, there is no normal, I guess, is even more accurate. There is no normal for that. So he's like, yeah, you should be calling me Your Grace. And he might be right. He probably is right based on that. You know, for keeping it even, like, yeah, if the woman is Your Grace, then why isn't, they should both be Your Grace when they're the secondary, the lower ranked half of the couple, whether they're king or queen. Anyway, maybe, good call, Bill Sotheby. Maybe
there's at least as much an implication that Aegon or Alicent are not Your Grace. It's me and Rhaenyra.
Okay. Yeah, because in a society where there's no queens, no ruling queens, Your Grace to a woman would never imply they're in charge. But it would to the man. If you're saying it to the man, you're saying, oh, you're in charge. No, my wife is in charge. But I don't know if that's it. It's just one possibility. Blue Fleur.
Before we move on, Curtis Franks says in the UK, the consort to a queen regnant is a prince because kings always outrank queens.
Oh, interesting. Okay. All right. Well, as we know, real world systems are not identical to each other. King and queen don't mean the same thing in every country. Or prince or princess or inheritance laws.
And the real world can be just as sexist as Martin's fantasy world. So,
in fact, it's based on that. Yeah, yeah, you're right. It's based on the real world version.
One quick thing before we move on, you gave a shout out to my Star Trek shirt a minute ago. What about your shirt, Aziz?
Oh yeah, I've got a cool button down Blackwood shirt. Shay got this for me. It's
I
pretty
didn't get
nice.
It for you, really.
You got it for me.
Well, I designed it for you and printed it for you. I didn't I made it for you.
Yes, you did make it for me. Yes.
Smelted it.
Yes, she did design it. She also made me a Golden Company one and a Lannister one. So I got the skulls and I got the lions. So,
and you have a greens and blacks one.
Oh yeah, Targaryen greens and blacks. That's right. I forgot about that one. I should wear it again soon. Blue Fleur says Alice wasn't eating at the table, was she? No, she was not. She walked in after they had already stood up from the table and knelt, and then she came in and just stood there and gave Damon a stare.
And then she wasn't there when they're eating after. She's gone.
Yeah, she left, yeah. Which is interesting and mysterious, like her. Let's go to King's Landing. We start in King's Landing much earlier in the episode, but with Kristen Cole looking down, and it was a trailer shot, and everyone's like, well, I wonder what he's looking down at, studying a map or what? They cut away from Eric and Ark's grave just as we moved to this, so it makes it look like he's looking into their grave, and that, in a sense, gives him responsibility for the act as well, which is kind of neat, a little camera trick there. Perhaps, but in the moment, he's not thinking about Eric Ark, probably. In reality, he's just, who knows, he's got a lot of weight on his shoulders now. I don't feel bad for him, but it is like, from a human perspective, anybody, even a guy like Kristen, is going to be like, wow, I got a lot going on. I'm about to go right out to war. I've got this dark secret. Whoa, lots going on here.
I got the impression he was thinking about Eric and Arik a bit. He was still haunted by like that's what
Valid.
I got.
Totally valid, yeah.
I think he was thinking at least partly about that, but I think he's thinking about a lot of things. I think he's overwhelmed. I think he's maybe thinking of mistakes and regrets that he has, but also I think he's got to pull himself together to go be the freaking hand of the king. And I think he kind of knows he's not ready for that. He didn't ask it. He wasn't like manipulative like Loras, right? He wasn't angling to be hand of the king. And now suddenly he is. And I think he's a little overwhelmed with it. I think he feels obliged to try to do a good job. But I think he's overwhelmed with the mistakes that he's made and the decisions that are out in front of him.
You're so right, Sean, because I got that impression too, that he was nervous, anxious about this big first hand of the king meeting. And especially because he's, he's lower born. He's not from a super high nobility house, the Coles, and he's Dornish. And we've talked a bit about it. I don't know if we've talked about it on stream, but we were even wondering, like, how articulate is he? Like, can he read and write? Can he read and write well? I don't know. But, he's generally not the most learned guy. So for him in a meeting, I feel like he would be really nervous. And I kind of, weirdly, despite last episode him doing so much to make us hate him even more, I kind of felt for Cole more in this episode than I had in a long time, because I think, it's a really relatable type beat for someone to be in a position of high power who is surrounded by all this nobility who just is born to it, and he's not born to it. And I felt for him in not being born to it like them.
I'm glad you said all that, because it was the thoughts that were bubbling in me too. Because later we even see him face a little prejudice when Gwen comes. Like, I'm so excited to ride off with a Dornishman. I think he was being mocked a little bit. Yeah. And it's also, I think that they are doing something with Damon and Cole that I think this is the most sympathetic either of them have been in a while, right? Both of them didn't make particular mistakes or weren't particular jerks this episode, and were sort of faced with personal toughnesses. I don't know how to say it exactly, but now, it might not be enough for both of them to make up for the awful things they've done in the past, but I think the show is making an attempt to keep them from being straight villains to us consistently,
Absolutely. Yeah, and to build on what Ashay was saying, and as well as you, Sean, twice in this episode, he's forced to deal with upstarts who are less competent than him, lower ranked than him, but higher in the social order. So they don't allow him to forget that. Like, the first is Aegon's new Kingsguard. He didn't even know they were appointed until he meets them. And one of them's like sitting on the stairs and gets up real slowly, like, oh, okay, I'll stand up now. And then Leon Estermont, when he walks into the room, gives him this just like super disrespectful look, like, all right, but Cole, yeah, look at this look, like, this is how you look at your Lord Commander your first day of the job. Like, this guy is, he's like, no, the king's my friend, I don't have to worry about a thing. Yeah, so they are totally lording over their birth over him, even though he's had, according to Gwaine Hightower, a giddying ascent the gods have bestowed on him. Notice he says, you didn't work for that. The gods bestowed it on you. You didn't earn that. Yeah. There's so many little insults and microaggressions against him. Yeah.
I didn't even think of it till just now, but in the context of what we're saying, I bet behind the scenes, Cole has probably spent the last day or a couple days or whatever preparing to be hand. He's probably like thinking about the battle plans, learning the names of the different lords, probably like looking at a map. He suddenly has all these new responsibilities, and it's probably partly why these other Night Kingsguard could be selected without him being aware. He's probably up in the tower. He probably is literally living in new quarters, has a new schedule, has new responsibilities, and doesn't want to make a fool of himself. So he's trying to learn, trying to do what he's supposed to do. And in the meantime, Aegon is doing stuff behind his back, and he's got to like put all that down too while he goes into this this meeting as Hand of the King.
So in case it wasn't clear, those are his 3 drinking buddies. And so I have dubbed them the Drinkingsguard. Yes, and henceforth they are the Drinkingsguard.
Someone in the chat called them the Aegoons.
That's good too. Aegoons. That's good. I like it. These guys deserve several nicknames, I think. So yeah.
Of the beer gardens.
Keep them coming, y'all. Yeah. So there's an argument in the council about how to use the armies, where to strike first, and it just devolves. And Alicent has this great line: "This council must rediscover its discipline, as if its previous discipline, as if it's to be of any use." I love that, but it's not as good as her line to Cole when he's like, "Gods favor the bold," and she says, "They did not favor Sir Arik."
Yeah.
Wow, that was great.
And you saw it pretty clear in that moment, but a couple other threads to this episode, it seems like the two of them are falling apart.
A little bit, yeah, a little bit.
Yeah. How much of it is maybe they've become emotionally torn up over, the kid being killed, or him or they neglecting their duty, maybe leading to that, but probably also Alicent frustrated that he's kind of taken her dad's job. He took her job.
Yeah.
That's probably going to affect them emotionally, romantically, whatever else,
Yeah. Well, and they're going to not be together as much. And that might expose some of the fact that they are only together in the first place because neither of them really has any other options, and they're around each other so much. We talked about how that's just they have a lot of negative things in common: loneliness and chastity, enforced chastity, and social stuff that's making them act this way. Yeah. So, and they're both hot. There's
before,
that too.
If he was just like standing outside her door all the time, it was easier for them to succumb to temptation. But now, if he's in the Tower of the Hand, he can't just like right quick run over to Alicent's room and run back. It's a lots of new dynamics are going on in their lives that are playing out in this council meeting.
Yeah. So the argument happens. There's Ironrod and Sir Tyland and Orwyle kind of go at it a bit. Like I said, Ironrod has a couple of great lines. He's snarky as usual, as we can expect that from him. He's called Ironrod, but really he should be like Iron Snark or Snark Rod. He's got so
Iron
many
tongue.
lines like that. What's that?
Iron tongue.
Iron tongue. There we go. He says, he brings up the infirmity of Lord Grover Tully, says it very snidely. He also points out the Blackwoods and Brackens will fight over anything, which he's right. He's right about kind of both those things. He also says, we replaced, I replaced 3 Kingsguard. I got new 3 Kingsguard to replace the ones we lost. And Ironrod goes, one needlessly, we might say.
Yeah, a little dig at Cole.
Yeah, he's such a snark. I love it. There's House Stark, but he's House Snark. Actually, he's House Wild, but I'll call him House Snark. Anyway, so one of the arguments he says, he's like, this is Brackens and Blackwoods are fighting each other. We can't call this anything other than that. And Aegon slams the dagger into the table and is like, they're going to call it. It's like, you call it what you want. I call it war, and so will Dragonstone. He's pretty much right. Rhaenyra is still holding back, but most of the people in Dragonstone are saying that. So he's mostly right. He's impatient. We see that come out every once in a while. He's not as impatient as he was because things are kind of happening. He's gotten to make some moves. He's named his Kingsguard. He expects this plan to go out. He's already expecting to fly out to battle, too, at this point. And that's when they start to push back. Cole repeats the plan he had with Aemond in secret, that they're going to gather a small group, take on some Crownlands houses, build their army one by, house by house, and then eventually they'll have a big enough one that they can strike west for Harrenhal. Now, they don't know Damon is at Harrenhal. That's an important factor. They just have agreed that it's the most important place to go. So, but there's a change in the planning here when Cole says Vhagar and Aemond will stay here, and Aemond is twirling a coin, which is probably the same coin he found under the table after the assassination attempt. He stops twirling like, I wasn't expecting that. Like I thought I was going with you, and he's annoyed at that. But he mostly controls himself. He doesn't get mad like his brother. The only sign is the coin thing that he stops flipping it. And then it kind of the role reversal happens where Aegon is argued or given the order that his brother's going to stay, and then Aemond argues why Aegon should stay. So that for the same, it's like, oh, you're brave, it's brave of you, but we got to protect you. And Aegon doesn't take that well. He takes it the wrong way. He takes it as a stab at his courage or at his capability in war rather than just the smart thing to do with the king. He doesn't see it that way. He's like, oh, Aegon the Conqueror went out, like, all these other guys went out. Damon goes out, like, why shouldn't I go out,
He doesn't take it well, but sort of. He does take it because everyone else, when he said that, everyone at the table was like, whoa, 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 whoa. But he's going to do it anyway. But when Aemond speaks up, Aegon's like, fine. No, I think he decides he's waffling still. It seems like he decides to go anyway.
Yeah.
But then Larys convinces him not to go anyway. But I do think that it was interesting the control that Alicent or Otto were hoping to have over him, Aemond has over him. And Aemond was not only disciplined enough to not himself want to go right out and attack, but to also use the control he has over his brother to keep him from doing it. And I think that's something that...
Is that real? Did you guys both have that take? I had such a completely different take on that Aemond interaction with Aegon. My take on it was that Aemond was specifically, he was trying to goad Aegon into the field. He wanted him to go. He thought it would work, and it was going to work until Larys did go in and undercut him. That's to me, Aemond was like, okay, well, you go then, you go.
You mean so it was kind of like a Cersei standing up and demanding that Robert not fight in the tournament, and just to make sure that he would.
Yes, it was exactly that. That's how I took that.
I think you're right, and I just missed that. I think you're right, and I just missed that. But maybe the next episode will fill us in on that. I don't know. You could be wrong, but I think that's a very good idea.
That's why I think he stopped playing with the coin. He was like, I gotta try to manipulate my brother right now. He's like, he kind of went into manipulator mode right there.
That's very interesting. I do like that call. I think you might be right. I definitely didn't consider that, but now that I'm hearing it, I'm like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And that is what you would say if you wanted him to go, to get him to go, just like that's what Ned realized when Varys put it to him that way.
So Larys, when Larys comes to Aegon and tells him that, there was a kernel of truth there. Alicent wasn't doing that. Aemond was, I think. I think Aemond did want him out of King's Landing and potentially killed. And Alicent didn't. So Larys was doing a half-truth right there. And I think Larys was just kind of saying that because he knew it would be effective. I don't think Larys actually knew that Aemond did that. It just happened to be what Aemond did.
Okay.
Well, here's a couple things. If you are correct, which I wouldn't argue too strongly against, because I still think it's, if I can make a pun here, two sides of the same coin. Aemond is able to control him better than anyone else at council. He might be doing it a different way than I thought, but the point is, I think he's better controlling Aegon than anyone else at council. But here's the argument I would make against you, though, is like, what if Aemond didn't say anything? It seemed like Aegon was going to go, and no one was going to be able to stop him. And that's
how it ended. That is how it ended, Sean. Remember, that's what happened. Aegon says, "I'm as fierce as any of them," and no one says anything. They all stop the argument. Alicent's like, she has nothing to say. It's like how she stopped short of comforting. She has nothing to say. And then the scene cuts away. There is nothing more after that until we later come back. He's already put his armor on, and that's when Larys gets him to not do it.
Okay.
So I think that's what makes me think Shea is right, because he says, "I'm going." And then that's the end of the argument. No one argues further.
I read it as, and again, I can see it that way easily, but I read it as he was trying to save face. Like, I won't go, but if I went, I would kick as much butt as
But he
anyone.
doesn't say that. That's not what he says. He says He doesn't say, "I'm not going." He doesn't agree to not go. Yeah. So, but you might be right. That's still. But I think for now, I think I'm going with Shea's interpretation. I think she's right.
Yeah, he immediately agrees. He says he's gonna go, and then the next time we see him, he's getting his armor on as if he's gonna go.
No one has stopped him. He's on his way. Like, even his Kingsguard thinks he's going. Even after he talks to Larys, they still think he's going. And he's like, then he says, "Okay, maybe I'll stay back." Anyway, we'll talk about that one in a minute. Let's move on briefly to talk about the scene with Helena in front of that. And it's pretty short, but it's meaningful, and it gives us a little more insight into her character, which I think just more people are going to be like, "Boy, I really like Helena." She has this insight into, well, I have better health care. She doesn't say it that way, obviously, but that's the long and short of it. She has better health care. She's the best health care there is in this society, and almost no one else does. So, of course, they're going to lose more kids than someone in her position would. Probably. Like, there's always the randomness of it, which is what Alicent tries to point out. She's like, no, you still have as much claim to grief as anyone, which is a fair way to put it. It's like, yeah, like, just because they as a group lose more children, there's plenty of mothers that have never lost a child, and plenty of royals that lose lots of children. So it's still on a case-by-case basis. And that's part of the dynamic here, is Helena's trying to, like, think of herself as a group of people, or like all royals. She's not just an individual here, and she's thinking of the common folk as a group, as a collective, rather than just individuals, which is how she has to, 'cause she doesn't really know a lot of other people, and it's just her perspective, and I think it's really neat.
However, I don't know, wealthy, however fair her state of life is compared to other people's state of life, it doesn't mean she can't be sad that her kid died.
Yeah.
I think that's what Allison is saying.
Yeah.
But I do appreciate that Helena has this sort of awareness of the state of people's lives outside of her own. Like, it is a sad thought that these people out there don't have the same support. And like, they probably have kids that starve to death sometimes.
Yeah.
Like, maybe it's random my kid got murdered, or childbirth maybe doesn't have as much to do with how wealthy or poor you are, but there's no chance of my kid starving to death, and the common people do have to face that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So all that still seems a little wrapped up in her trying to deal with this grief, right? Maybe there's definitely worse ways to do it, but it still seems like there's a little suppression going on. She's not really accepting it,
I think that's true. It might be part of just her mind works a little differently, but I think that element is there. Yeah, it's a little like stepping outside of herself to maybe not feel it as much. I'm not sure. But there's also, while she's telling some of these, giving her opinions to her mother and talking to her, there's some more of her. She's got a bunch of crickets in a cage that she's looking at, and just being a bug girl, like she's a bug woman now, no longer a girl, a bug mother, right? And she abruptly forgives Allison, her mother, and Allison's like, "What?" I love how Helena takes it literally. He's like, "I said I forgive you." It's like, "No, I did not hear you. I'm just stunned that you said that." But I love that she takes it literally. Okay, so it seems like the obvious thing is she's forgiving her for sleeping with Criston Cole, but is there more to it? Do you think there's multiple apologies going on here, or is there? Yeah, what do you think, Sean? I'm curious what both of y'all think about this.
I suppose there certainly could be other things, but I took it to just be Criston Cole. Like, okay. I forgive you for, I don't know, maybe for not being as good a mother as you could have been, or some more big picture thing like that. But all the things it could have been, it's got to hit Allison pretty hard no matter what, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. It's totally Criston Cole. And yeah, you could probably read an undercurrent of, forgiveness, general forgiveness for poor motherhood and getting them into this whole debacle in the first place, as we'll see at the end of the episode with the misunderstanding. You could stretch it to say she forgives her for the situation or something, but I think it definitely is meant to refer to Criston. But I don't think any statement like that can be read without the general sense of I forgive you in general for anything. I think she's not holding on to any grudges against her mother about anything is the point.
So it's a nice thing to do, to absolve her mother of that guilt, or to try to anyway. It won't necessarily. It may not work. She may still feel some guilt over it, because Helena doesn't
feel more guilty than ever.
Yeah, Helena doesn't know all the things that Alicent has done. Other things she might be forgiving her for are you stole the throne, and that's why this is all happening. You played a role in that. You played a big part of that. Or even simpler, much simpler. She was complaining a little bit about that horrid procession where I had because she forgives her for making her go do that.
Yeah,
because that's who argued her into it. She said it was the other people who were making her do it, but Alicent's the one who comes and tells her to do it, and that we're going to go together and it's our duty. And yeah, it
might even be that might be another piece of the forgiveness is your hypocrisy. You kind of pushed me into going on that procession because you said it's my duty, but you aren't doing your duty.
Yeah.
And so I forgive you for being a hypocrite.
Yeah. All right, let's return to Aegon then. Let's talk about him getting dressed for battle. We see him wearing Aegon the First Valyrian steel armor. That's not a thing from the books. There is no Valyrian steel armor from Aegon that was ever talked about, but it's believable enough that there would have been. Aeron Damphair, who sees a suit of Valyrian steel armor, says it would cost a kingdom, but that's just his estimation. Whereas Martin Rain here says it would cost a castle. It depends on the castle, I guess. Maybe it depends on the kingdom.
Depends on the kingdom.
So neither of them truly know. I mean, they're neither. It's this isn't some official pricing guide, right? This isn't a catalog. They quoted the Amazon price for Valyrian steel armor. So look at this armor. Shay is putting all these different images of it. It's so cool. 20 weeks to make, they said it took. And it's way more detailed than you can tell on screen. So that's part of why we're showing you these shots here. And if you haven't watched the behind the scenes, this is one of the things they feature there. It's very cool. So Larys comes in. and quips with Red Ned Waters there begging a private word with Aegon. And this is so expert level. This is like a chess master playing against a person who's never played chess before. He comes in and he's like, hey, bro, your garden's full of weeds and you've got no gardener. He's like, will you be my gardener? And it's like, well, yes, actually. Good idea. You know, what a great suggestion. You honor me. And he says he knows exactly what Aegon's levers are, the things that he's that affect him the most, the things that touch his pride or that he's weakest on. And in this, it's his self-esteem. Okay, so here's something that Tom Glencarney himself said. That Aegon, that's the actor playing Aegon, of course, Aegon is maturing a little bit. Not fully, but just enough to realize that he's a fraud. He's starting to be aware of that he himself is a fraud, and he's lashing out and being insecure about it and trying to make up for that, which is the whole flying with the army, which is why there's a decent chance that he's being egged on in that, because it is a pretty straightforward issue he has. It's pretty observable.
No, he's being aimed on.
Nice. Yeah, he eggs on Aemon and the squire. Aemon aims on him. Yeah, anyway.
Yeah, I had that thought in that scene. In fact, maybe even when we're talking about the best performances of the episode, it was they're all great. I feel like I maybe it's even unfair that Rhaenyra just gets so much more screen time, so I pick her. But the moment when he was looking in the mirror in the wake of this scene, I felt what he said later on, that he's realizing he's an imposter. He's like looking in that. I even wonder what else might have been going on there. Like, I wonder if there was a little fear, if he was a little afraid to go riding off into battle with his dragon. And thank goodness I have an out. I need to stay home and make sure my mom doesn't usurp my power. Like, he's like, oh, thank God I don't have to go risk my life now. I wonder if there's at least a piece of that in that moment. But certainly he's thinking like, I'm no Aegon the Conqueror. Yeah. This isn't really my armor. Maybe is he wondering, is Alaris manipulating me? Like, he's warning me that people are manipulating me, but he's just manipulating me, isn't he? He doesn't know what to do about it. He doesn't know what's true. He doesn't know who he can trust. He doesn't know what he's supposed to do. Think about the moment too. It comes right after this, right? Does it come right after this? It's right in this moment when the guards are like, hey, let's go get drunk and go to
it's right after
the brothel. Yeah. And he's like, wait, you guys are supposed to sort of vow celibacy now, right? And like, oh, yeah, right, give me a break. I think Aegon in that moment is realizing that all this sort of like pomp and circumstance and lore and legend of Targaryens and the Iron Throne and everything, he's it now. He's it. Like, he grew up, even if he might have been dismissive of it, he knows that the Kingsguard aren't supposed to have wives or kids or whatever. Like, it's still this institution that he's familiar with. And now he's kind of in control of it. And he sees that they're not doing what they're supposed to do. I bet there's a little bit of guilt in him, like, I screwed up the Kingsguard, didn't I? What am I even doing? I don't know what I'm doing. But in the end, he's like, oh well, screw it. Let's go get drunk. Like, he
once he
doesn't
gets some
know
drinks
how
in
to
him.
accept responsibility. He's matured a little bit, but not nearly enough, right?
Yeah. That's well said. Yeah, because when he's looking in the mirror, this is a grave look. He's not preening. He's not like, oh, look how good I look. No, he feels the weight, the literal and metaphorical weight of that armor. He is no Aegon the Conqueror. I didn't quite read the, I don't have to go out and fly to war part the same as you. I agree with pretty much everything else you said. But that part, I think he really is eager to go fight. I think he really does want to prove himself. I don't think he's afraid of battle. Maybe he should be. But I don't think he's afraid of fighting.
That's the piece I was really sure about.
I think they can coexist. I think he can be excited for war, but also have a kernel of relief to him.
Because he's so ready to go. He's like, yeah, I'm gonna fly with Cole. Like, it didn't come off as afraid. But though I think you're right, there could be a little bit. There could be some insecurity mixed in there. That's why he's so eager to prove himself.
Renly and all his summer soldiers were all eager to go too.
Yeah.
However dead they ended up,
That's true. So I am very much looking forward to seeing Larys in the council room from now on. right? He never tried to worm his way in with Viserys because he knew that's not a guy he could manipulate in the ways that would be important to him. And not to mention there was already someone that had Viserys on lockdown, and that's Otto Hightower.
and Otto even had Mysaria kind of filling that role. So.
Yes, that's true. Yeah, he already, so he was kind of waiting for his chance. Now he has it, and he's going straight to the top. He's like, I'm not negotiating or working my way through Alicent anymore or any of the other council members. I'm going straight to the man and becoming important to him, and he will start coming to me. And yeah, so it's really expertly done. And I agree with you as well. The looking at, he looks at his drinking's guard and is like, this is on me, but he's not consistent with it. Like you said, once he gets a drink in him, or several drinks in it, he forgets all about that, as we see. He's outright wasted in this next scene, which doesn't start with him, but we're going to talk about the bar scene. I absolutely love this scene. Ulf is like Norm from Cheers. Everywhere he's like comes with like, no, Ulf, hey, everybody's so happy to see him. He's a good storyteller. He's the guy at the bar that everybody likes. He's always getting free drinks. He loves the attention. And it's pretty rare that we get a POV like this. We don't have a lot of characters like this. Lowborn, not rich. They don't have a famous house, although he does apparently, according to him. And it's just that he's not directly connected to him. Yeah, does he? That's one of the questions I have for you. But hold on a sec. He tells his heritage story to his friends here, and they're doing it for the benefit of this Dornish guy who's buying them drinks. And there's Samson Kao from Our Flag Means Death, and that's cool. He was on. We
love Olawande.
Yeah, and he's on the crew with Christian Nairn, a.k.a. Hodor. So another reason to watch Our Flag Means Death. So he claims to be Balon the Brave's bastard. That's the father of Damon and Viserys. Let's first examine Balon the Brave and see if this is even possible. Balon's wife, Alyssa, who was a Targaryen, it was his sister, died in the year 84, and Balon lived until the year 101 and never remarried. It was his death that prompted the Great Council, don't forget. He remained unmarried, so that's a long time of being unmarried. So he says he never was able, no one could replace Alyssa, and he, honored her till his death. That doesn't mean he didn't go to a brothel. He didn't have needs or get lonely, right? Like some people say, no, he would never do that because he loved Alyssa so much. Like, we don't really know this guy that much, We know
him from a history book.
Yeah.
And even Tywin Lannister, who loved Joanna so much, is pretty strong. We know he definitely slept with women, but he also probably slept with more than Shay. That's my point.
100%. Yeah, I totally agree. So, and of course, that doesn't mean this guy was anything like Tywin. That the point is, yes, unmarried, long-term unmarried. Are we sure this guy really never slept with anyone else again, ever? Yeah, not very likely. Anyway, possible though. Anyway, so it certainly fits. You can't dismiss this just on who his father was. That certainly works. And we have that scene in season 1 where Viserys mentions how he and Damon would go to the brothels when they were young. So it's well, maybe, their father did that too. He calls himself a dragon seed, which is an existing term that has not been yet said on the show, but it's been around a little bit. It's a term for not just Targaryen bastards, but the descendants of Targaryen bastards. Anyone with blood of the dragon. In the books, he's Ulf the White, but it seems like they've dropped the white part. He's just gray, kind of like Gandalf the White going from Gandalf the Gray. But he argued, and they frame this cleverly. He says, this means nothing since Jace has brown hair, right? That's a fair point, right? Not all Targaryens do have, the silver hair. Even some half Targaryens definitely have other color hair. Not that this means he is who he says he is, just that the hair color is not an argument. Again, it's not a deal breaker for the argument. He calls himself the grandchild of Jaehaerys the Conciliator, which would be true if he's Balon's son, and it's yet another name drop of Jaehaerys. It's the second or third time that name gets dropped in the episode. And he calls Rhaenyra the true queen. So he's definitely siding with, quote unquote, his family. And what do you think, Sean? What's your read? Is he telling the truth? Is he not? On one hand, if he's not, sure, people could tell the story. If he is, maybe that makes the story more interesting. The meta is an interesting consideration here. But yeah, tell us what you think.
I think it's possible that he believes he's telling the truth.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Now, it still could be true or not true. I also guess it is possible that that it is true. But I think about how he could know that it's true. That pretty much the only way is his mom told him, or maybe someone who's not even his mom told him. I just think that it doesn't matter. That even if it's true, it doesn't matter because you just can't possibly prove it. And I think that he seems to have a little bit of a, I don't know, con artist in him, right? Like, it's like, hey, you want to tell this story? I don't really feel like it. Oh, maybe if you buy me a drink. I wonder how many times it's told this story. How many people in that bar? Do you think it's just those 2 or 3 guys at the table? Or do you think everyone in there knows? Because he can't wait to tell everyone because you're going to buy him a drink for it. And maybe it's part of why he's popular. But it is risky to go around say this, right? So like if it, I don't know. I don't like this guy. Whether it's true or not, I don't like this guy. And I think he's going to cause trouble and or get himself killed. So.
That's so funny, Sean. I didn't expect you to not like this guy. I like that he has the gift of gab. I find him entertaining. He clearly has some dubious morals in that he's stealing, but he's also not necessarily well-to-do. So can you really? I don't know. It was just an apple. I don't know. But I am very intrigued by Ulf personally. I would say. Yeah. Sorry.
I had so much fun with Ulf in our breakdown, writing our breakdown, because I just refer to everybody as their relation to Ulf. So Aegon is now Ulf's nephew, and Rhaenyra is Ulf's niece, and Aegon the Conqueror is Ulf's great-great-great-great-grandfather. Everything is framed from Ulf's point of view.
Yeah, it really cracked me up editing the breakdown as I've been going through it every time he says that. But what I wanted to say, I remembered, was Ulf is really giving me shades of Glendon Ball in A Night of the Seven Kingdoms, Fireball, which is why I would have thought you might like Ulf, Sean, because you love Glendon Ball, and I feel that he's got some similar themes going on. Maybe not as much of a heart of gold passion to him, but I feel the dynamic is similar in that, for those unfamiliar, I'll just say real quick, there's a character in A Night of the Seven Kingdoms, the Dunk and Egg books, Glendon Ball, who believes he is the son, the bastard son, or just son of Fireball, a very famous warrior, and claims it and is kind of made fun of for it.
But Glendon Ball stands up to ridicule and torture over the integrity of who he believes he is, which once again might not even be true, but he is confident and proud enough of it that he is willing to die over it. This guy is angling to get a free drink over it. Like, get out.
Lots of free drinks.
Yeah.
So Tracy McMillan asks, was the serving girl waiting on Ulf and company Deanna, the one who was assaulted by Aegon? Yes, that is her. That the one that the guy spanks, and that's how we see her, because he spanks her and she like gets shocked and gives us a chance for the camera to focus on her for a half second.
She can't escape being assaulted.
Can't escape being assaulted. No, yeah. And Allison told her to go work somewhere far away. Well, she clearly didn't go do that. But anyway, I don't blame her for not moving. It's hard to move in this, to leave, go move to a different city. Like it's hard to do in this era when you're a commoner.
To her limited world, this might be far away.
That's true.
2 miles away is pretty far when you've only ever traveled the castle.
So it's a moment of like awe and shock when Aegon just shows up at the bar with his drinking's guard, and Ulf is like facing him. They're like, "There's your other nephew," and he's like, he looks legitimately scared. Like he's like, whew. Like, because like you said, Sean, like telling these lies or these truths, either way, it could get him killed. So he's not wrong. Like that's one of the most honest things he probably said there was like, this is the kind of thing that could get me killed. That's the part that's true. Like that's definitely true. Even because even you're right, even if he's making it up. It's dangerous. So we don't see Deanna's reaction to Aegon showing up. She'd be like, "Oh my, what the hell? This guy." She might just go hide in the corner or something, but we don't see it.
We just see her serve him.
Yeah. Oh, is that? Oh, we do see her serve him. That's it right there. I didn't realize that happened. Oh my gosh. She turns her head away. She's like, "Don't notice me. Don't notice me."
Yeah, well, she just comes up and probably brings his drinks and then walks away. It's just
he probably doesn't even notice. He might not even remember her. Yeah, I mean, he's wasted. He's super wasted at this point. So he may not remember her, and he's drunk. So there's double whammy there. So everyone's happy that the king's coming in to buy them drinks, and everyone except Ulf, who is like just looks like he just had a brush with death, and then they quickly move on. We see them, have their drinks, and then we just brothel scene. Right, we head over to the brothel, and things get a little more serious over here. This episode had Millie Alcock, but this scene truly had all the cock. Yeah. Tom Glencarney shows off more excellent drunk acting skills, mostly laughing at his brother, and this is pretty cringy because it's so mean, right? This feels so. It's like, talk about like mocking your brother, making fun of your brother. Talk about bringing back trauma from when you're young. Let's not forget that he blames Luke and Jace for the prank, but we know Aegon was the mastermind of the pig prank in the first place. He just kind of got away with it. Like they didn't, like his mom confronted him. He's like, no, I didn't do that. And she was willing to believe that, in retrospect, she probably should have pressed it more and be like, really, you're blaming the Velaryon kids, the Strongs? You always blame them, But I mean, to be fair, they were a part of it, no doubt. They definitely went along with it. But Aemond is proud and he's triggered by this teasing. He says, oh, she means nothing to me, but does anyone believe that?
The other guys might. And I think he said that
right.
very calculated.
We don't,
because,
I don't think. Yeah.
Right, exactly. I think he needed to say that because he paid attention to what she told him before, is like, you angry princes cause trouble for regular people like me. And like Damon telling the story about, oh, I'm going to marry Miss Arya. She's pregnant now. Like, that could get her killed. Like, if he says the wrong thing, if he lets Aegon or these other people think that she's important to him, she becomes a target.
That's true.
She becomes one of their toys. She's in danger. He has, for her sake, he has to pretend like she doesn't matter to him.
Yep, has to wash his hands
of him, but he was really protecting her. And that's part of what he was struggling with. He wanted to lash out at his brother. He wanted to defend his honor or her honor or avoid this embarrassment, all these things. And he's like, anything I do, even if it's justified, it's just going to get her in trouble. Mm-hmm. I just got to get out of here and pretend like I don't care.
I'm not sure that mattered to him more than his own pride, but I definitely think that's in play. Six of one, half a dozen of the other. And he calls him Aemon the Fierce, and he's just mocking him, and he's laughing so hard. No one else laughs. The Drinking's Guard don't laugh. The Squire does not laugh. Sylvie obviously does not laugh either.
I think one of me and Heather was like averting their eyes for the whole situation. Yeah.
The Squire, by the way, is referred to as like Piggy or something, which I think makes me think he's from House Hogg, which is a Crownlands house, and the Hoggs do have various historical associations with the Targaryens. There was a Sir John Hogg who fought.
We saw another
with Maegor.
hog.
Did we?
Two hogs.
The pink dread.
No, in this episode, 2 hogs.
Where were the other ones?
Oh, Aziz, my sweet summer child, you are.
Oh, the hogs, of course. There were 2 in this very scene, yes.
Yeah.
She's referring to male members, yes. Peni, yes. I forgot those are called hogs sometimes. So, is Aegon mocking his brother just because he's a dick, or is it in part some of his own insecurity coming out, hearing what Larry's told him, and like trying to get back at him a little bit? I think it might be. I think does he hammer his brother with this much mockery if not for that, or maybe he does it anyway? What do you think? Tough call, huh?
I think it's mostly because he's drunk, honestly. That's what I think. Yeah. Maybe a combination of drunk, and the reason he's drunk in the first place is he's trying to avoid his failings and responsibilities and whatever all else, insecurities.
Yeah, that sounds about right. So Blue Floor asked, the new Kingsguard were the Aegoons, right? Yes, the Drinking's Guard, the Aegoons. Yes, those are his 3 buddies that were sitting by with him on the throne, giving him nicknames that he hadn't earned. Yeah, those same 3 guys are in the Kingsguard. Yes, like, wow. Yeah, I know that's confusing to some people because this, Sean, not a book thing. He doesn't do that in the book. So we have no idea where it's going with that. Probably nowhere good. These guys don't seem very competent. But maybe they'll come up with some spicy new nicknames for him. They're good at that.
Can I say this might be jumping ahead a little, but I think that this does piece together well. I remember thinking it was a little dubious that Alicent could go to the Sept and Rhaenyra meet her, and the Kingsguard not be more aware. It seemed like there'd be too many eyes and too much protection. No, if this is the Kingsguard, none of these yahoos, they don't know or care. They're hungover. Like, these guys aren't really keeping the proper care of the royal family.
It was also established that they wait outside for her, which is why it worked too. The Sept thing. Like, that's how they did that in season 1. Like, they don't go in, they give her privacy. They're standing right outside the door, which should be safe enough. Anyway.
But they still let a lot of other people come in and out, and someone sat right next to her.
Yeah,
and her voice
it
was
might be a
raised
security
couple
leak,
times,
but they don't see it that way, at least not right now. Okay, so let's talk about, we're actually almost to that scene. Let's talk about the marching out scene. Criston Cole heading out with his army. Alicent meets Cole as he's leaving, and this touches back on what we were saying earlier. There's a little bit of tension here. We get our intro to Gwaine Hightower. There's more tension with him because of all his rudeness. It's kind of funny, though. It's hilarious rudeness. It's like this guy really does play the role of the upper class snooty kid quite well. We talked about this guy before. Freddie Fox is his name. We were very excited for his appearance, and we were not disappointed. He was, speaking of snarky, I mean, this guy, he nailed it. Yeah.
It helps to make Criston Cole look more sympathetic when you put a jerk like this in front of him.
That's a good point. That's a very good point. So Gwaine says he's been on the road for 3 months. What timing? He just misses his father's dismissal. I mean, to be fair, that would be like, what the hell? Like, man, I traveled all this way and my dad's just left like 2 days ago. Technically, we've seen Gwaine Hightower before. He was in season 1, episode 1. He was in the joust. Damon challenged him directly. He was like, he's going to choose a challenger, that guy. And then he cheated against him, right? He lanced his horse. But that wasn't Freddie Fox. That was just some guy in a helmet. I mean, not just some guy, but it wasn't Freddie Fox. Anyway. So, Otto noticed Alicent and Cole, right? We all seem to catch that Otto gave Alicent and Cole a look when they came into the council chambers right after sleeping together. Gwaine notices Alicent give her favor to Criston. And Kristen's kind of being like, she doesn't look like she's thrilled about doing it.
Yeah, it was pretty reluctant.
Yeah. He was a little annoyed at her for making Gwaine go. Yeah, he was a little annoyed at her for making Gwaine go with him. So I think he was kind of like needling her a little back. Like, well, then send me with your favor, you know? Like, because it's not him. He's not your favor. Yeah. Sorry, I interrupted you. What were you going to say?
He did that a little publicly. He let her get a little distance away, so he had to raise his voice for her to hear him, and so now it's awkward for her to turn down the Lord Commander in hand. Yeah, he kind of forced her to have to, if you will. You know?
I completely agree, Sean. I thought that he did that as well as kind of a show of power, the little bit he could to put a little pressure on her there, and I found it to be a really brilliant counter parallel to season 1, episode 1, when Criston asks Rhaenyra for her favor, and she gives it so happily and readily, and Alicent also just looks taken by the pageantry of it all, and the idea that, oh, I want a boy to ask for my favor, and all of that, right? And then and here now she is getting asked for her favor, and it's not everything she wanted.
Well, Damon asked for her favor in that scene, remember?
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
And she looks back at her father like, is this okay? And he's like, he doesn't say no, but he's like, that dude just cheated against your brother. Like, don't take his favor. You know? I think she got it afterwards. Yeah. So anyway, so they ride out in their very small army. Now, here's a question, Sean. I asked you this about Baela Rhaena. Will Cole and Alicent ever see each other again? Or like anytime there's a parting, it's a worthy question. Like, there's so much death in these shows. You know, what's your guess? It's obviously a pure guess, but maybe there's context clues from the way the story's playing out, you know.
I will say I hadn't considered it with him. Now that you ask me, I'm like, oh yeah, there's a good chance not. But I hadn't thought about it. I wasn't as worried about him, you know. And I don't know if that's because he's with the whole army and he seems to be a more important character on screen, or if it's because I guess I hadn't considered like the repercussion, like who would be the next hand? Is that Lars's angle to get in?
Well, one of the Dragonstone, clearly, right? No.
Yeah.
Stick with the Kingsguard for hands, you know.
Yeah, I hadn't considered, that he might not come back either. Yeah.
So we'll see. Yeah, we'll see. I just wanted to get your take on that. Yeah, as they leave, it's a small army, which explains why Rhaenys nor Baela see them at first. Baela obviously sees them not long after, but that is explained by the small size of the army, and that was the point. Criston says we go in a small group, add men as we go when we're out of sight. And as we see, as they leave, we see Cheese's body rotting as a crow feasts on him. A feast for, well, one crow anyway. Presumably there's more crows on the other bodies, so it works. Moondancer! Here we see several trailer scenes get resolved and clarified. Gwaine, acting like a member of the Drinkingsguard, wants to be comfortable, have drinks on campaign, being real snooty about it, acting like Cole doesn't have authority over him. And Cole has to ride out personally to stop him, which I appreciate. I know like some people would see that as just, would he really do this himself? Yes, he would do this himself. He wouldn't send a messenger. They would ignore the messenger. They almost ignored him. So they don't think anyone can tell them what to do. So yes, he's got to like go be authoritative about it. They're resisting his authority. Something tells me after the scene they're going to listen to him a little more. Like, to Gwain's credit, he does seem to back down after realizing he's screwed up, and he thanks Cole for saving his life. So it's a really fun scene. Ryan Condahal said that the design for Moondancer was, there were two notes he gave. David Bowie and tiger striped green punk rocker with a mohawk, which is related to David Bowie. So that's Moondancer's design. We stan. She is so cool. I love how she notices them. It's like there's like a little glint of armor in the distance. It's not like she can't really see them that well, but the shining armor is there. And it lets you know that if they just covered themselves in cloth, it might also help stay unnoticed. But anyway, so going at night will certainly solve that problem, as Cole says. That was pretty cool. I like that. It was a neat little way to bird's eye, dragon's eye view. And later that gets brought up, the whole Baela's good eyesight thing, as kind of as a moment of diplomacy, but we'll come back to that. Yeah, Gwaine says, good showing, Sir Kristen, you know, like, and thank you, you know. And Cole takes the opportunity to his newfound leverage of saving the man's life to be like, and no effing ins, you know, like, all right, now you're going to listen to me, huh? Aren't you? And we'll see if he does, but you get the sense that he's going to, at least in the short term.
I think that did also add a little bit to, I don't know, maybe Cole's experience and these guys' privilege. When he warned them when they were about to head out, he's like, it's going to be a tough ride. And like, oh, well, I'm excited for a tough ride with you Dornish.
Yeah.
But now they're on a tough ride, and instead of sleeping in camp with everyone else, they're going off to the inn. He's like, look, I told you it's going to be a tough ride, man. It's not a vacation.
Yeah, he wasn't expecting to get attacked by a dragon, but that nothing tells you, like, you need to be more careful than that. Like, that's a brush with death. So, I don't know if you noticed this, Sean, but did you hear Baela putting in her dinner order right as she got to the tree line there? When she pulls up to the tree line, she goes, sea bass, and then fly. That's a Valyrian.
I heard she said something. I assume it was Valyrian.
Yeah, it's Valyrian.
Or whatever.
Yeah, it is, but it sounds like sea bass, so it sounds like she was making a dinner order. Anyway, so she goes back, and then we see the report of this encounter. We'll call this the back in black council section here. Rhaenyra's council, again, just so ready for war. Obviously, they were already so ready. Even ready for dragons. Now they're even more ready for it after this, because they have this straight up indication that there's an army on the march, and Baela's quite sure about it. And remember the earlier insubordinate scene. There was Alfred Broom laughed at her the first time. He doesn't laugh this time, but they're still not... Like, who would laugh at... No one would laugh at Aegon, especially not... I mean, they didn't laugh at Aemond either. Like, laughing at Rhaenyra is just a good way to show that they're not taking her seriously. There's a little misogyny, probably, and contempt for what they see as weakness. Like, if she was, like, all aggressive and warlike, there might still be some of the misogyny, but they would not be laughing at her in action. That's for sure. But they're not entirely wrong. Cole has taken the field and is making moves. I don't necessarily agree with their strategy, but the inaction is a bit of a problem. They don't know Damon. They haven't heard back from Damon. We know his plan is in motion. Stuff's happening. Now, Broom's plan that he suggests is pretty similar to what Cole, Aemon, and Aegon are doing. He's just like, let's just go intimidate houses. Go out there, start intimidating houses, and make them follow us. He's not quite as region specific, and he doesn't even have an army. He just says they should send dragons. So it's not a fully fledged plan. It's not a very good plan. It needs more work. But he's not wrong that, as we said at the beginning, yes, it's good to try for peace. But from our perspective, from the viewers, we know it's too late. We've seen the armies march. So, but Rhaenyra wants to take that last stab at it. She's like, I appreciate this quality of her. She's not letting them make her mind for her, which shows that she's not weak, right? That in itself proves she's not weak, because she's standing up to them. She's like, nope, you're all arguing against me, and I don't know, but I'm the queen. I decide, so I respected that. It's like that line in season 1, a reluctance to murder is not weakness. A reluctance to unleash dragons isn't either. But once the war is started, you can't half-ass it. You got to go.
I'm realizing as we're talking about this, there's some parallels going on here. Do you remember when she was a cupbearer for Viserys?
Mm-hmm.
And Corlys wanted to go attack the Stepstones, and Viserys said, no, I don't want to get mixed up in war. Everyone's a little frustrated with Viserys not wanting to get mixed up in war. Now here she is. They all want her. And she offered up in that moment. She's like, well, why don't we send a dragon rider? We don't necessarily have to declare all out war. We could send a dragon over there.
True.
And now that's what her whole council is telling her. Look, send the dragons, man. Push our power. And she's like, no, I don't want to do it. Just like Viserys didn't want to. And Viserys also, when was it Damon? I can't remember now if it was Damon or Corlys that pressed him. They're like, you need to do something. You're not doing anything. I did do something. I sent envoys. I offered treaties. I've mobilized ships. It's not like go to war or nothing. There are other ways to take action. And that's what's Rhaenyra can't tell them this, but that's what the action she wants to take first. She wants to try before the dragons is go talk to Alicent. Like Rhaenys put that seed in her mind, and that's what she's angling for this moment, because I think she knows how bad it's going to be. I think she realizes that is eventually the path that they're on, is the dragons are going to just start fighting each other. And we just can't let that happen. However unpopular or stressful or risky or whatever other plans there are, it's got to be the last resort.
Well, to clarify one thing you said, she's saying that about the dragons, yes, but the armies are marching. She knows that. She already knows there's going to be a war of soldiers at this point. Unless she's basically only trying to stop the dragon part of it. She knows, I don't think she thinks she can even stop, she can stop the armies, because the armies can easily be drawn back on their own. Once they take orders, they'll do what they're told for the most part. And it's not a simple thing. And we think about Valyria as well. The same thing is true there. We have an episode on ancient Valyria and the Rhoynar with Nymeria and that whole business of the Rhoynar being destroyed and her fleeing. Well, a big part of that is same thing happened there. There were lots of conflict between the Rhoynar and the Valyrians before the Valyrians actually sent dragons. There was fights with armies and all this stuff. It was forever before dragons got involved. And there weren't dragons to fight back. It was only dragons on one side. Even when they were the only dragon riders, they still didn't send them for a while. So yeah, this is a long-standing strategy, because your dragons, the fear of them is worth more than what they can do in battle, because there's no risk. If you never put them in battle, they can't die. And then you always have that threat. And then you always have that leverage. Once they go into battle, you might lose it.
Yeah, even if you don't lose it, what do you burn down River Run and now you control River Run? Oh,
no, yeah.
Why do we? Yeah,
it's destroyed.
You're gonna kill all your people that you're trying to rule and protect. It's just the worst. Yeah.
Yeah. So I said I was looking forward to seeing Larys on the Green Council. And now, perhaps, we'll see Mysaria on the Black Council. I suspect the other members will look down on her, and they'll probably look down on Larys, too, for his deformity, though he's noble. So this will be different. This will be more misogyny and lowborn, which is probably going to hit harder, because they have more they can pick on her for in the society. And Mysaria wants a reward for saving the queen after Eric Ark. Fair play. That's how much is the queen worth? Yeah, you do deserve a reward. But mostly, she says it's Rhaenyra's mercy. Her restraint towards the common folk, that's why she wants to team up with her. That's why she's like, okay, now I'm on your side. But she also has no mercy plan for the Hightowers. That's something they seem to agree on. Myzaria's like, yeah, I have no mercy for the Hightowers. The common folk, yeah, but no, not the Hightowers. And of course, this parallels Aegon stuff. So we don't have, she's not explicitly called Master Whisperers, but yeah, yeah. What is your general level of trust here with Mysaria? Do you think... is she mostly what she says? She wants to protect the common folk, or is there a little bit of other ambition here? Is it true what she said about wanting to be a person of consequence? Is she back to that now? Yeah, just give me a 1 minute take on Mysaria.
Yeah, I have a hard time reading her. My inclination is to trust her. She seems to have fundamentally good motivations, but she has also been dishonest and I don't know, manipulative, selfish, other things in the mix. Like the thing is, in this current scenario, I think the worst she could do is like, I don't know, run off with some money at a key moment. Like, I don't think she's gonna sabotage Rhaenyra in any way. Does that make sense?
She doesn't have loyalty to the Greens. Yeah, why would she change sides? Yeah, that's part of what makes her safe, I guess. Yeah,
I may not fully trust her, but I think she has enough value, and the damage she could do is low enough that it's worth trusting her. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. So there's this brief conversation they have about sea smoke. Mysaria asks, "Are they always like this?" And Rhaenyra says this one's been restless lately. We saw sea smoke circling around Adam of Hull before. And I correct him. I was like, wait, am I going to say the wrong name? I always, Adam and Alan, always mix them up. And Mysaria has interesting insight. She says, well, maybe he's lonely. And Rhaenyra seems taken aback by that suggestion, but it doesn't go anywhere. She just thinks about it for a second. It's like she never considered that. And I wonder, it's like, well, maybe that could be it.
Well, two things there. One is some people think this could be a clue that Laenor has died off screen and Sea Smoke is now lonelier. I don't necessarily think that has to be true. I think it's just Sea Smoke has been lonely and has gotten lonelier over time and all that. And it makes me wonder, too, one, if Sea Smoke and Syrax hang out, does that help with Sea Smoke's loneliness? I don't know. But also I think it parallels Rhaenyra right now, actually, because Rhaenyra is about to be all alone and a solitary dragon, you know, and lonely. So I kind of feel that Rhaenyra in this episode is feeling lonely, and Sea Smoke is too. But we'll talk more about Sea Smoke, Aziz, and I on our Saturday spoiler episode.
One other thing to point out here, though, there's a trailer.
You're muted, Aziz.
One other shot we saw from the trailer, speaking of Syrax, is this Sea Smoke and Syrax facing each other from very early trailer scenes pre-season. So that also perhaps presents a little bit of connection between them.
Let me tell you my read here. Now, I don't know where it's gone. There's a strong chance I'm completely wrong. Don't spoil me. However, they immediately cut the immediate next scene after this viewing of Sea Smoke and maybe he's lonely, cut to Rhaenyra, to Rhaenyra and Rhaena. They cut to, I think the next image on screen is Rhaena. And so to me, I'm like, oh, she's finally going to get her dragon, Sea Smoke. That's my current predictions. That
would make sense. I guess the problem is that Sea Smoke going to follow her all the way to the Vale? Yeah, maybe she will.
That would make her safer. But the Vale wanted a dragon to protect him. Maybe that'll be the dragon.
Hey, there you go. You know, that would be a funny way for that to work out. Like, hey, one followed us here. We didn't plan to bring this one, but it followed us here, and there we go. Yeah, okay. Yeah, that'd be cool. Let's talk about the final scene, sneaking into the Sept. It's set up first by Rhaenyra sitting alone in her room without her children. As we said, the whole queen without the mother, the loneliness that you were just speaking to is a good setup for this conversation. She puts away her children's toys. She seems to be holding an idol of the mother, looking at it and reflecting on it, which sets up where they're going to be soon in the Sept with the big statue of the mother looking down on them. So that's pretty cool. And this scene is also...
I want to say before we finish it up, I'm not going to say it now, but I have several thoughts from throughout this episode that really get tied together. I mean, throughout the series, they get tied together in this final scene. So give me a minute before we end it to put some thoughts together.
This scene is transitioned from Sylvie, who's kind of like Aemon's foster mother figure as well. So there's a lot of mother vibes here. She finally reads Alicent's letter, the one mentioned back in episode 1, the same one Lord Jasper mocked at the time. Like, oh yeah, the apology for your son's death. You know, like I'm sure she loved that letter. And the moment she unlocks the letter, breaks the seal, the green dress song starts playing, which is Alicent's theme song ever since the green dress moment in episode 5 of season 1, which of course is it's so famous now that it's even in part of the intro. So she finally, I guess, decides that this is worth her one last try after reading this letter and seeing what Alicent wrote. And Mysaria's prior knowledge of Alicent's movement is key here. This is pretty well set up because, yes, Alicent has a regular appearance at the Sept. This is pretty well situated, pretty well established. And the Sept is where Mysaria hid Aegon, where the showdown to capture him was. So she's very familiar with the area, understands how it's used by the royals, understands its... what goes on there, knows some hidden rooms, I guess. And Sir Stefan Darkland, who is, Rhaenyra, goes with Rhaenyra as her Kingsguard, pretending to be a begging brother or a septon, reading his book there, as you can see on screen. He sits down like right where Cole dueled Arik, while Aemon tackles his brother who doesn't want to be crowned and says, let me go, let me leave and all that. Too bad they didn't. Then this scene wouldn't be happening. It might still be. It'd be Aemon instead. So this scene gives us quite a few trailer moments we were wondering about. Shay and I talked about this way in the preseason. There was this shot of Alicent's dress and Rhaenyra's dagger, and it was Rhaenyra's rings. We're like, that's Rhaenyra's hand. That's Alicent's dress. What the hell's going on here? Why are they in the same room together? Well, now we know. Lots of daggers in this episode. We got the dagger slamming into the table. We got this dagger. We got the dagger up the sleeve for Sir Stefan. Yeah.
Is it spoilery for me to ask? This didn't happen in a book. She didn't sneak in and have this meeting with Alicent?
Correct. It did not. Yeah. This is something that, this one would be hard to say. It's in the histories. Like, how would they know about the secret meeting,
They also didn't have such an impactful, close relationship in the books, so it wouldn't have really even been on her radar to do.
Yeah. She was 10 years older, and they weren't close buddies. They didn't grow up together. So as they're walking into the city, there's a really interesting filmmaking technique that Geeta Patel uses a few times. She uses it the first time when they're going to the bar. You have no idea who you're following. You're like following a crowd, and it's like, oh, it's this brown-haired woman. And then no, it's not. It's this guy. Oh, it's Ulf going into the bar. They do the same thing here. You have no idea who you're following. You're going into the gate of King's Landing. And there's like a cart. There's some people. There's some more people. And you have no idea who it is we're looking at. And it's like, oh, there's Rhaenyra and Stefan. So it's pretty cool to show them in disguise. Even we didn't see them at first. Even we don't recognize them at first. From behind, they just look like any other two people. And yeah, I like that. It was kind of neat little way to show just how blended in they were. Now, let's not forget as well, Rhaenyra snuck out in public with Damon back in season 1 also. Like, she was young, but she had a little cowl. But she has experience being incognito and does have and has been out in a crowd before without being recognized. So she can be like, yeah, I've done this and wasn't recognized. So when Mazarius says, you'd be surprised how little people will notice you if you're not dressed up to be looking good or in royal clothing or whatever. And she's like, yeah, good point. In fact, I've done that before and it worked. So
yeah, she was excited when someone called her a boy, like, get out of the way, boy. I was like, who? He called me a boy.
Yeah, that's right. That was fun. And this was clarified nicely in Ulf's scene as well. Remember, the Dornish guy's like, you don't look like Damon or Viserys. And he's like, how do you know what they look like? Like, right? Yeah. It's true. They don't know what the royals look like. Like, there's no internet. Like, what if someone in Dorne doesn't, unless you see them, and maybe even if you do see them, you probably saw them from a distance. Like, when did you get close to the king or the prince? Like, you probably didn't. So these are good arguments why she won't get noticed. That said, I kind of don't love the idea of the scene. It was maybe a little contrived, but it was so good. The execution was so good. And it was very important resolution and very important clarification. Now, we know that Alicent knows it was a mistake. But she was wrong about her interpretation of the prophecy, but she's right that it's too late to do anything about it.
I completely agree with you, Aziz. Not my favorite thing conceptually, but I think that getting these two characters together is important in a lot of ways for the story, for the arc of the show, the series, etc. I can see it, and I don't think it's the most contrived in that Damon literally went to King's Landing recently. We have seen this in A Song of Ice and Fire. People having to... Jaime went in... Like, we've seen... with Tyrion and Jaime, like we've seen this type of dynamic happen so many times that I don't think it's crazy. I don't think it's totally
It's more of a trope, I guess.
Yeah, it's more of a trope. Exactly. It's a trope. I don't think it's a terrible trope. It's not my favorite. I don't find it super riveting. I don't find myself on the edge of my seat about it. I'm not really worried about Rhaenyra getting caught. You're like, what's going to happen? Nothing's going to happen. So, like, there's that for me. But I think it gave them some really important story beats, character beats. And it wasn't dumb. It was foolish on Rhaenyra's part, but worth the shot, I still think. Like, I don't think it was dumb of Rhaenyra to try this. You said it earlier, Sean. If she thought there was a 1 in 1,000 chance, 1 in a million, like, if there was some chance that she could stop the war a bit, that's worth it to me, even if she's risking her life. And I do like to see a ruler risk their own life when they're risking the lives of all their people. So overall, I would say I give the idea of it like a 6, but like the effect of it like a 9, you know?
Real quick before you say anything, Sean, just to add one more thing so you can have this to add on to your comments, is that the trailer shot for next episode, there's one where Rhaenyra explicitly says, and this is something people wanted to hear probably, some people, she says, I had to know that there was no chance to stop the war, and now I do. So now she can fully commit. She says that in the trailer. So she was the last one holding out along with Rhaenys. Everyone else is already doing it. You know, everyone else is escalating. Armies are marshaling all over the country. The Greens are marshaling their dragons. They're conspiring against each other potentially. Yeah, so now Rhaenyra is on board too. Everyone's on board now. The war is happening. There's no longer a single person that's trying to stop it. And Alicent says at one point, she swears on her mother's grave that that's what Viserys said to her, that he repudiated Rhaenyra, or named Aegon. He didn't actually repudiate Aegon. Repudiate Rhaenyra. He named Aegon his heir, and she's like, you're a liar, you're lying. And okay, I swear on my mother's grave, which Rhaenyra did swear on her mother's grave back in season 1 about the issue of hooking up with Damon. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, she was lying. Alicent honestly believes herself, although not after the conversation is completed. But at this point in the conversation, she's like, no, I'm telling you the truth. So after arguing about that, Rhaenyra just asks a question that I was begging her to ask. I was like sitting there watching the screen like, ask her, what did he say? What did he say? Ask for particulars, you know? And she says that. She says, okay, what did he say? What did my father say on his deathbed? And she says, yeah, he was confused. He was the prince that was promised. He mentions, she says the word, the prince that was promised, and the music kicks in. It's like, oh, there's that music. There's the prophecy music, the Song of Ice and Fire dagger music. And Rhaenyra's mood shifts quickly. She's like, what? Did he say that? Because there's no way she would know that term, right? That's like a code word that no one else is supposed to know. So it really gives her credibility. It's like, oh crap, he really did tell you about this. But she doesn't know the whole thing. It becomes quickly apparent that she doesn't know the whole story of the Song of Ice and Fire. She just knows this little bit that Viserys rattled off. And that's when Rhaenyra fully seems to get it. She's like, okay, you already said he was kind of out of it. So he's just kind of telling you these details. And he's talking about Aegon the First. Aegon the Conqueror had this story. And Alicent has that moment. She's like, Aegon right? I saw people joking about this on Twitter. It's like, there's lots of Aegons, right? But actually, there's not that many at this point in history.
At that time, there weren't as many.
Yeah, and there hadn't been many other famous Aegons, and there's no other like Aegons who are relevant now. There's Aegon the Uncrowned, killed by Maegor. Why would he be the one? Aegon the Younger, Rhaenyra's daughter, but why would he be the one? He's 3 years old, and he wasn't present then. Like, why would? It's not a great answer that it's him. So yeah. There's hardly any other Aegons at all. So yeah, so that's it. She actually spills a little bit of the strategy, mostly stuff that's already known, but not one thing that wasn't. She says, yeah, Cole's already on the march, which she knew. My father's gone from the city, which she didn't, but she sort of suspected because Rhaenys said Otto didn't give this order, this Sir Arik order. And she says, and Aemond, well, you know what Aemond is. And she had already repudiated Aemond for killing Luke earlier in the scene. So she's like, well, of course you would repudiate that. And then Rhaenyra backs. I was like, well, okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, you're being honest about that. You didn't want your son to kill my son, but she's still mad about it. So she has a hard time yeah. So I don't think that's a super big knowledge drop that she just gave Rhaenyra, but that's like, she's going to go back and say, yeah, Otto's not there, and whatever relevance that has, it matters. But yeah. All right, Sean, here's your moment to, you said you had some thoughts saved up. Let's have that be our last thing today, and we'll call it a night.
I'm afraid this might be a little convoluted, but I'll try to keep these pieces connected. That the thing is here, let's say that it had gone how Rhaenyra wanted. Like, remember what she said. She, it was kind of a joke when Alicent is like, oh, well, so you came to surrender to me? Like, what do you like, it was so good when she's like, if I scream, what's going to happen? Yeah, they'll come and kill me, but I'll kill you first. And Alicent's okay, well, then what? And that kind of, to me, kind of stirred all these thoughts I'm about to spout out. The war would keep going. I don't think if Rhaenyra dies suddenly Damon's like, oh, well, I guess I'll bow down to Aegon now, right?
Right.
Alice, in fact, it probably stirs the war even worse, if anything. And kind of a point you made about like sending Arak to try to kill Rhaenyra, maybe it stops some portion of the war that would have happened, but probably immediately Damon and Jace fly with their dragons and burn King's Landing. You know what I mean? Like that. What next? What do you think happens next after we die? What do you think happens next in general? Because let's say that I agree. Let's say I want the same path to peace. She said, I'm not here to surrender. I'm here to find a path to peace. I'm hoping we can uncover a path to peace. Let's say that Alicent's like, you're right. We should find a path to peace. I think you should be queen. I'll go tell Aegon. Right? No way Alicent says that. But say she does. And say when she tells Aegon, Aegon's like, you know what? I didn't want this anyway. You're right. Rhaenyra should be queen. I'll give up the crown. Do you think that would just end it? Or do you think Aemon steps up and says, no, I should be the king?
Yeah.
And Kristen Cole says, yeah, there's no way I'm ever bending the knee to Rhaenyra.
Right.
And all the other lords and Otto, everyone, no one is just going to accept that. That would not end it. So maybe if Rhaenyra says, you know, the path to peace is for me to back out. I wish I had just done this in the first place. I don't care about the crown. You can maybe compare it like to Stannis, who wants to be king, but realize, well, actually, as king, I need to protect the people. Let me just start protecting the people, not worry about being king. What if Rhaenyra did that? She's like, you know what? I'll drop my ego. I'll drop my claim, and I'll just say, do you think at that point, Damon is like, okay, yeah, Aegon's a king. And
nope. You're right, Sean. That wouldn't stop it. Yeah.
They're going to keep this war is going to happen no matter what. And I think it was true 3 days ago, 3 weeks ago. I don't know at what point they maybe theoretically could have stopped it from happening. And it makes sense that Rhaenyra doesn't know when she's going to talk to Alicent. She doesn't realize how out of hand things got. She thinks that Alicent still has the influence or, you know, power or whatever.
To be fair, I think she hopes she
this.
has it. I don't think she thinks she has it. She hopes she has that.
Yeah. But it's however much she's hoping for, it's even less. She doesn't know that Kristen is the Kingsguard now, and how much we talked about last time. She probably doesn't realize how much Kristen has it out for her.
Mm-hmm.
And that's true. Hand of the king.
You mean hand of the king? Yeah.
So it's the thing. It's so sad to me. This whole scene, I think, is so revelatory of how hopeless it is and has been, as hard as Rhaenyra is trying, and Alicent too. They can't. There's nothing they can do. It's just past that point.
You knew from the beginning of the episode it was hopeless, but this scene shows you just how hopeless it was and how hopeless it's been for a while. That's a great point. Yeah, it goes to show it's gone too far for a while. It's already gone too far. Yeah. Let's say
Alicent hadn't misunderstood Viserys' last words. In fact, what if Viserys made it even more clear that don't forget
the council had already plotted to take the throne anyway? Yeah,
exactly. When she went in there, they didn't decide to do it because of these last words Viserys had. That just made them feel a little better about it.
That just got her on their side.
They were going to do it anyway.
That's why she joined them. She wouldn't have joined in otherwise, I don't think.
Right. But say she didn't join in, what does she do? Take a boat, like abandon?
Go into retirement? Yeah, I don't know. You have no idea.
Dragonstone, I think that's part of why that moment when she said no mistake was made. I think that Alicent has already done what Rhaenyra needs to do now, is just accept it. Just it's whether it's true, whether I can control it, whether I'm lying to myself, whatever. Like, in order to go into war, in order to protect my family, in order to make these tough decisions we're about to make, like Otto did when the boy was killed, and rather than grieving it, use it as a political move. Like, Alicent just has to be committed. She just has to be committed to what's happening.
If it's a lie, we fight on that lie. There it is again. Yep. Well said, Sean. All right, folks, that's nearly a wrap. One last thing. I loved that Rhaenyra also called Aegon feckless.
Yes, that was perfect.
She has the same word-a-day calendar that Otto had.
Yeah, so they only have one word-a-day calendar in Westeros. They don't have variations on it yet. Yeah.
Dude, I like Digby Smollett's comment here. By the way.
Okay, yeah, Digby Smollett's comment. Yeah, good point, lad. I wasn't going to skip that. They say, I thought Helena was forgiving Alicent for some future act, because I always assume Helena's not in the present.
I really liked that idea, which makes me wonder, like, what awful thing could Alicent do to Helena? I don't know.
Yeah.
So, real quick, Sean, as well, the whole, like, what are you going to do about it thing, like, which we love from It's Always Sunny, and, like, they bring that up. It's like, it's such a great thing to say. Like, what do you do? And he's like, what are you going to do about it? Like, oh, man, that just ends the conversation. In the trailer for the next episode, Aegon is yelling at Alicent, and she goes, or what? And then it just cuts away, like, oh, yeah, so she realizes she can or what also. Like, she's got or what power. Like, do you have or what privileges? Can you or what your way out of this? Yeah, you can. Some people can, yeah. So she might try to or what her way out of, I don't know exactly what, but something. So anyway, exciting. We're not even halfway through the season. Things are going really well. We're building up to the big payoff moments that will be painful and exciting, and there'll be plenty of more character work within that, though, too. More history, more locations, more fun. Thanks to all of you who support us on Patreon or on Spotify as a pledge there, or those of you who support us any of the other ways that you can access through historyofwesteros.com. Thanks as well to Bran the Builder for our awesome intro. It looks so cool, and I love all those coins and those faces and those dragons and that fire and that blood. On behalf of Ashea and Sean, we will see you next time, and you know what to do. Until then, Valar re-read us, and Valar re-watch us.